Frevens is called the White Town by the world, because it is the only country in the world that has sources of platinum lead ore. With the monopoly advantage of platinum and lead, Frevens is one of the richest in North Blue. At this time, in the courtyard of a certain manor in Frevens, a man with short pale blonde hair was lying on a rocking chair. The man looks young, and the eyebrows seem to have not fully grown, so he looks a little immature, like a boy of 16 or 17. However, he has an aura that doesn't seem to be in harmony with this young man's identity. At first glance, people feel that he must be in his 20s, and he should be a young man. Just as the man was resting here quietly, there was a faint sound of footsteps outside the courtyard. Soon, a man in a black suit, brown-black sunglasses, and a cigarette in the corner of his mouth walked into the courtyard. The man who walked into the courtyard had a very elegant demeanor and looked like a polite gentleman. As if hearing this movement, the man who was lying on the recliner turned his head slightly. He casually picked up the orange sunglasses that were placed on the table beside him, put them on the bridge of his nose, and covered his eyes. "Senor." The man sat up and called softly. That's right, the man who walked into the courtyard was a cadre of the North Blue Donquixote family named Senor Peak. At this time, he was handsome, calm and elegant, and he hadn't become the one after the tragedy. A ridiculous, pervert look. "My lord." Senor walked a few steps, stopped and responded. Undoubtedly, the one he called young master was Don Quixote Doflamingo. Doflamingo's life has been full of ups and downs and wonderful. He was once the celestial dragons, and gradually became the dark side of the North Blue, the middleman of the underworld, the seven warlords of the sea, the king of Dressrosa. The prisoner of Impertin. But none of that matters now, because Doflamingo, at the age of 10, is no longer who he was in the story. I still remember that when I came back to my senses, the strange soul stood in Marie Joyce in the body of Doflamingo, and in front of him was a group of grotesque celestial dragons, surrounding him one by one, blaming and humiliating themselves. And Doflamingo held a human head in his hand. It was his father's head. Fed up with this naive and stupid father, Doflamingo killed his father himself when he was 10 years old, took his head, and wanted to return to Marie Joyce and become celestial dragons again. But it turns out that's not feasible. He was humiliated at the Marie Joyce, and was kicked out of there in embarrassment. This weird and unexplainable soul crossing did not bring any unnecessary effects. No one found any problems with him, even Doflamingo himself, and even the Conqueror's hockey that he was born with that day can still be used. After being humiliated on Marie Joyce, Doflamingo did not make any drastic moves. He returned to North Blue step by step, and was enshrined as king by Torbo and other freaks who had seen his conquerors, and established the Donquixote family, constantly growing and growing at North Blue. It seems that everything is the same as the original story, but there are also some differences. For example, when Torbo and others took out their own collection of string fruit and wanted to dedicate it to Doflamingo, making him a paramecia string fruit capable person, they were disgusted by the young Doflamingo refused. The young master doesn't want to eat string fruit. Therefore, Doflamingo at this time is not demon fruit power. After stretching slightly and stretching his muscles, Doflamingo asked again, "How is it? We have successfully bribed some ministers in Frevens. Toripel has signed a 5-year platinum lead mining license with the mining department of Frevens, and at the same time won 6 projects with 10% of the current exploration output. Rich platinum lead ore." Senor reported the situation softly. That's right. The reason why the Donquixote family came to Frevens this time is because the mining agreement signed with Frevens 2 years ago has expired, and Doflamingo also intends to expand this business, so with a group of cadres come here in person. So far, things seem to be going well. Doflamingo tapped lightly on the small round table beside him with his slender fingers, and after thinking for a moment, he asked, "Very well, according to the plan, all the platinum and lead except for the share given to the world government will be transferred to selling in the underground world. The royal family of Frevens has a very close relationship with the world government. The mining of platinum and lead cannot bypass the world government at all. No matter who you are or what your status is, as long as you mine platinum in Frevens lead, you have to pay 30% of the proceeds to the world government without compensation, otherwise, Frevens will not give you the mining rights." At this time, neither the Doflamingo nor the Donquixote family are qualified to say no to the world government, so even the little bully of North Blue has to follow the rules honestly. No problem. The previous 2 years of experiments have proved that the profit of platinum and lead smuggling in the underground world is much higher than that of formal channels. Senor immediately responded. The Donquixote family itself is the largest smuggling gang in North Blue, so even though platinum and lead can be legally mined and sold in Frevens, in order to maximize profits, the Donquixote family decided to flow platinum and lead into the underground world for sale. On the one hand, you can earn more, on the other hand, You can also use the rarity and monopoly of platinum and lead to further expand your network of relationships in the dark world. Fooferfer. The business this time is much smoother than I expected, Doflamingo said with a slight smile as the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This also proves that under your leadership, young master, our Donquixote family is stronger and more influential than it was 2 years ago. At least in North Blue. Senor also smiled, his tone said very briskly. It's not far away. Doflamingo shook his head slightly, and then said with some disgust, the dust in the air in Frevens always makes me feel uncomfortable. The toxin of platinum and lead only volatilizes at the moment when it comes into contact with the air, young master, this is a psychological effect. Senor joked with a smile. Do you dare to believe everything the world government says? Doflamingo said disdainfully. To the outside world, the mining of platinum and lead is no different from the mining of other minerals, and there is no unnecessary risk, but for a very small number of people, they know that the world government discovered a long time ago that platinum and lead when mining, the moment it comes into contact with the air, a small amount of toxin will be released, and the toxin is genetic in nature. However, Doflamingo will never fully believe these arguments of the world government. It is better to have less contact with platinum and lead. Just when Doflamingo was chatting with Senor, the phone bug that was placed on the side table suddenly squeaked. Glancing at the phone bug, Doflamingo's eyes under the orange sunglasses suddenly lit up. He raised his hand to pick up the phone bug and said, Diamante. I hope you have some good news for me. Dover, I found news about sleeping ancient town, Diamante said hurriedly on the phone bug. Doflamingo's breathing became a little quicker, and with anticipation in his eyes, he quickly asked, what's the news? An antique relic smuggler on Mignon Island said that when he was young, he had read books about sleeping ancient town in the Tree of Omniscient in Ohara, the archaeological holy land of West Blue. Perhaps there would be records about sleeping ancient town there. Diamante responded. Doflamingo was stunned for a moment, and then said with some annoyance, I should have thought of it a long time ago. There should be clues in that damn place in Ohara. Sleeping ancient town, a lost island that has been forgotten in history, hides a devil fruit that even Red Earl Beloric Redfield covets. And Don Quixote Doflamingo also wants to get that devil fruit. The world-renowned teacher Kaido has a famous saying, only Haki is above all things. Doflamingo thinks there is nothing wrong with what he said. Haki is extremely powerful. Roger became the king of pirates with one hand of Haki, and Garp became the hero of Marine with one hand of Haki. It is definitely not a fallacy, but a fact that one can become a strong man standing on top of the world without relying on ability. As a natural possessor of Conqueror's Haki, 1 in a million people has the qualification of king. Of course Doflamingo also values Haki very much. It has been 7 years since he traveled here at the age of 10. During this period, he rejected string fruit, but he never let go of his practice of Haki. Normally speaking, in the first half of the 4 Seas and Grand Line, few people know, understand, and grasp the information and news of Haki. Generally, Haki is circulated in the monster paradise of New World. The same is true for North Blue. Most people don't know what Haki is. But the world is in circulation, not isolated, so many people who have arrived in the New World and come out of the New World have more or less mastered some unique resources, and Haki is one of them. Toribol and his group can be said to be the losers who were eliminated from New World. They have been to the New World, and because of this, they have seen the monsters in the New World, and they have all gained knowledge about Haki's practice. Perhaps it was also because I had witnessed the power and terror of conquerors in New World, so I admired Conqueror's Haki abnormally. When I returned to North Blue, I saw Doflamingo hanging on the city wall by chance, releasing the destructive and hatred-filled at the time of the Conqueror's Haki of the will. Toribol and the others were instantly overwhelmed by this Haki. Since then, they have bet their future on Doflamingo. What they bet on is that Doflamingo will eventually become the king of the sea. At the beginning, Doflamingo, the traveler, didn't like the string fruit, which was slightly hip-stretching, so he refused without hesitation, but he took the initiative to ask for the practice of Haki power from Toribol and others. Knowledge. Since then, he has never let go of his practice of Haki. However, it is a little embarrassing that the knowledge about Haki practice held by Toribol and his group of New World losers is not high-end. It can be said that it is a bad street thing in New World. It is no problem to be able to use it and practice it, but it seems that this is the end. He has practiced Haki in Doflamingo for 7 years, but he has not been able to advance Haki so far. Armament Haki can't flow at all, and he can't form the so-called emission. Moreover, Toribol and others don't even know what Haki has follow-up higher-end advanced powers. This makes Doflamingo very helpless. Over the years, he has searched for relevant resources in the dark world of North Blue, but he has not found any relevant resources so far. It can also be concluded from this situation that perhaps information and knowledge about hockey can be obtained in places other than New World, but if you want to obtain higher-end advanced knowledge, you still have to start with New World. Over the past few years, Doflamingo has also gradually summarized the routes and methods for mastering more advanced hockey practice methods. Basically, it can be said that there are 3 routes. The first one is head-covered penance. As we all know, the growth of hockey is basically a process of hard work and continuous tempering. Maybe he is talented and accumulates on the basis. In the future, he will be tired and break through on his own. Woolen cloth? But then Doflamingo thought about it carefully. In the original story, his own hockey levels seemed to be not good enough. Maybe it was delayed when he was young. In addition, he was scheming later and didn't work hard, which led to his performance in Dressrosa, the final defeat. Coupled with the situation in the past 7 years, Doflamingo feels that he is not a talent in hockey, so let's forget about this path. The second way is to learn from a teacher, find a powerful boss, learn from a teacher in a proper manner, and then go through the process to learn this craft. But as far as the current situation is concerned, Doflamingo really can't think of how to ask for a teacher. Who should he ask for? Those strong men and monsters in the New World are not so easy to talk about, and if you want to talk about the road of learning art, the safest way is actually Marine. Marine has a mature operating system and training mechanism for hundreds of years, which can completely help Doflamingo grow in a systematic and all-round way. But, in his capacity, the most unlikely thing is to join Marine, and he instinctively resists the world government and Marine. Thinking about it carefully, becoming Whitebeard's son is actually a way, but Doflamingo is not willing to bow his head. Therefore, it can be said that the road of apprenticeship to learn art is not feasible at present. Then it is the last way, go to New World to find it yourself. So here comes the question, what is the level of Donquixote Doflamingo, who has mastered the basic hockey and can be called the North Blue Bully if he enters the New World? The answer is standard chicken. But whenever he meets some capable villains and second-rate players, he can probably teach him how to behave. And again, some little guys are completely useless to Doflamingo, guys who can even be dealt with by him, can they still be expected to have advanced knowledge of hockey? So after thinking about it, Doflamingo felt that although Teacher Kaido's teachings are correct and hockey is indeed the most important thing, the fruit ability should not be underestimated. If Doflamingo has a very powerful devil fruit ability, then he can improve his strength to a new level in a short period of time. Then in conjunction with this strength, consider obtaining advanced knowledge about hockey from New World. The feasibility is very high. Hockey and ability complement each other. After clearing up these ideas, Doflamingo began to think about what kind of devil fruit to look for. This is a major event related to future life, and it cannot be sloppy at all. First of all, Doflamingo excluded the string fruit that Toribald didn't know where to get. Although this string fruit can't be said to be weak, there are still some places to show, but it is indeed comparable to some powerful devil fruit. In comparison, it is much inferior. Although there is a popular saying in Dahai, it is called, devil fruit without waste, only capable people with waste, which seems to mean that the strength of demon fruit power depends on people, not fruits. Well, it can't be said that it's completely unreasonable, but in Doflamingo's opinion, can you, a wild dog fruit, really compare to Kaido's Azure Dragon? Non-existent. So in terms of choosing abilities, you still have to be very careful. Possessing a foresight beyond the times, Doflamingo still knows some mysteries about devil fruit. For example, the so-called invincible thunder fruit is now hidden on Sky Island Burka with a high probability. Thunder fruit is Logia devil fruit. In terms of speed, destructive power, attack range, functionality, etc., it can be said to be first-class powerful, and it has no shortcomings at all. Among the many devil fruits, only it is recognized as invincible. It is conceivable how powerful it is. Doflamingo is indeed very optimistic about thunder fruit, but for now, he does not have the ability to reach Sky Island. If you want to go to Sky Island, there are usually 2 roads to choose from. One is to take the annual Sky Current from Gaia Island and go directly to the sky. That is probably a dead word, so it can be ruled out directly. The second way is to take the Marine Channel, from the New World West Heavenly Summit route to Sky Island. Well, for Doflamingo, who has not yet established a network of relationships and is not strong enough, Marine and the world government channels, he can't even use them. Unconventionally speaking, it is to find a way to worship Golden Lion Shiki as a godfather. As long as Shiki is willing, you can go to Sky Island as you like. But unfortunately, this way, Doflamingo can't handle it either. So Doflamingo didn't lock all his targets on Thunder Fruit. On the one hand, he was arranging manpower to find ways and clues to Sky Island. On the other hand, he was also looking for the legendary Sleeping Ancient Town. In Sleeping Ancient Town, there are top-level Phantom Beast Devil Fruit. bat fruit, phantom beast, vampire form. Relatively speaking, as far as Doflamingo's understanding of later generations is concerned, although the Logia fruit is powerful, it seems that the zone of the phantom beast is more pervert? Didn't you see that the main Kakuzu suddenly evolved from Paramecia to a phantom beast? Therefore, Doflamingo would not mind becoming Zone's ability user if he could get this powerful phantom beast devil fruit coveted by the Red Earl. Mignon Island, North Blue's notorious lawless territory. There are evil gangs, organizations, and forces from all over North Blue gathered here. There are basically no ordinary people on the island, even the owner of the tavern. Maybe before retiring to open the tavern, he was a gangster, the trump card of the killer organization or something. At the same time, Mignon Island is also the largest trading island in the North Blue underground world. On some levels, it can even be said that Mignon Island is North Blue's communication window to the external waters. Anything that North Blue can buy can be bought here, and things that North Blue can't buy can often be bought here. The largest smuggling channel of Donquixote family in North Blue is in Mignon Island. Although it is an illegal area, the port of Mignon Island can operate stably. It is dark and has its own dark order. The port terminal is managed by local gangsters in turn. Since the port terminal is a very important place for all people who do business on Mignon Island, no one wants to make trouble here. Of course, no one cared about some little movements. Just like at this time, Doflamingo, wearing a pink flamingo feather coat, a black suit, and orange sunglasses, walked down the ship ladder slowly. From a distance, he saw the captains of two groups of pirates duel. Pirates are a problem that has plagued the world for hundreds of thousands of years. As a world with the sea and islands as the main body, pirates and marine are like twins on the sea. One represents chaos and the other represents order. For thousands of years, they have been fighting endlessly. As far as the current time period is concerned, on the whole, marine has the advantage of the times. The Rocks pirate, which once ran across the world and flogged the world, was defeated by marine in the Canyon of Gods. That was about 16 years ago. Although this was done jointly by Garp and Roger, in the subsequent various public opinion propaganda, Roger was naturally not involved, and Garp became a marine hero because of this. Marine has defeated the Rocks pirate, and their morale and prestige have soared. For a long time, they have occupied the mainstream and advantage of the sea. But in the end, it has been 16 years. As the so-called feng shui turns, Marine's war dividends have basically been consumed. Now in the new world, new heroes and overlords have also risen one after another and began to compete. A new throne is here. The most representative of them is undoubtedly Golden Lion Shiki. As a member of the Rocks ship, Shiki has the ambition and strength of a lion to roam the world. The flying pirates he formed can be said to be currently the most powerful pirate group in New World. Followed by Whitebeard, Roger et al. As for the other three members of the Four Emperors, Charlotte Linland's development was not bad. Through continuous marriage, childbirth, and family formation, she gradually expanded her territory and influence in New World, which was very stable. And that guy Kaido, if Doflamingo remembers correctly, in the newspaper on the 7th of last month, this guy has been arrested for the 14th time, but based on past experience, he may not be long before he appears on the sea again. At the same time, it is reported that the Beasts pirates are currently occupying Wanokuni. As for the youngest Four Emperors Redhead Shanks, this guy should still be an intern on Roger's ship. But if you think about it carefully, it seems that he can't be there for too long. Now it is 1498, at the end of this year at the latest, early next year, the Roger Pirates will become the first pirate group to conquer the entire territory of the Grand Line, crowned king. Doflamingo murmured softly, looking away from the dueling pirate gang in the distance. Before long, this era suppressed by Marines will undergo earth-shaking changes, and a new era belonging to pirates called the Era of Great Pirates is coming. Before that, I need to get stronger, Doflamingo thought to himself. Although Doflamingo is young, he is still very recognizable and influential in North Blue, especially among the villains. Mignon Island is an illegal area. There are basically no good people on the island, and almost all villains. Because of this, there is almost no one on this island who does not recognize him as the North Blue bully, Donquixote Doflamingo. Because of his notoriety, no one dared to provoke Doflamingo. In this way, Doflamingo and a group of younger brothers from the Donquixote family who followed him walked into Mignon Island very calmly, and walked to the residence of the Donquixote family here. Middle. Doflamingo's height is different from ordinary people. He is only 17 years old, and his height is close to 3 meters. Although he is not strong, he is indeed tall. In addition, he has always been in the top position, and his body always naturally reveals a sense of oppression. His sense of humor, coupled with his attire and his innate evil temperament, really deserves the words, evil awe-inspiring. However, unlike in the original story, Doflamingo at this time did not like that kind of unrestrained attire, so he gave up the set of leggings, beanie shoes, and fancy fashion outfits of youth idol singers. At this time, Doflamingo prefers the outfit he wore in the original story when he killed his brother on Mignon Island. All the way across the street where the Donquixote family resided, soon, Doflamingo saw Diamante, who was coming towards him. The corners of Doflamingo's mouth curled up, revealing his trademark evil smile. When Diamante approached him, he asked, "Diamante, I knew that you were so outstanding and capable. People who won't disappoint me." Diamante's character is a bit strange. If you praise him, he will be humble, but if you take back the compliment, he will immediately admit it. "I'm not that capable either, it's all just luck," Diamante said, pretending to be modest. But this time Doflamingo was not interested in teasing him, so he immediately asked, "Did you contact Ohara?" As a sacred place for archaeologists in the world, Ohara has a pivotal position in the cultural world. The Tree of Omniscience claims to record all human history, culture and knowledge. Naturally, such a scholar's ideal town cannot be closed and conservative. On the contrary, Ohara communicates with the outside world very frequently. Some Ohara scholars will publish some of their own opinions in newspapers from time to time. At the same time, Ohara also publishes a large number of magazines every year. Every once in a while, academic exchanges will be held, and scholars from all over the world will be invited to Ohara. Collision with wisdom. Therefore, it is not a particularly difficult thing to contact Ohara. You can find the contact information by looking for relevant information, newspapers and so on. Contacted. Diamante nodded quickly. Doflamingo raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you say over there?" They said that there is not much information about Sleeping Ancient Town. There are only 3 books with records, and all 3 books are stored in the Tree of Omniscience, Diamante said softly. Doflamingo's eyes showed anticipation, but at this moment, Diamante changed his tone and said, "I originally wanted to ask them to borrow it directly, but the contact person over there said that all the books of the Tree of Omniscience cannot be borrowed. It's okay, I can go to Ohara myself." Doflamingo waved his hands indifferently. For knowledge, Doflamingo still respects it very much. The books in the Tree of Omniscience are the treasures of all mankind. It is reasonable not to borrow them out at will. Cough. Listening to Doflamingo's words, Diamante coughed his throat in embarrassment, and then said, "But as far as I know, if you want to enter the Tree of Omniscience, you must have the status of a scholar recognized by Ohara." "Dover, what kind of scholar are you? What do you study?" "Doflamingo, can I be a criminal psychologist? The main research object is myself." After being stunned for a moment, Doflamingo shrugged and said, "It's okay. I am willing to follow Ohara's rules because I respect knowledge, but if the rules are too obstructive, I will only respect myself." Diamante looked at Doflamingo with a smile and said, "It's true, after all, we are not good people, ha 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 ha. How can I access West Blue from North Blue? This is a question worth thinking about. In general, there are 2 ways. The first one is to enter the Grand Line, then cross the Calm Belt at a suitable location, cross half the world, and arrive at West Blue. Theoretically speaking, this set of procedures is applicable to all major sea areas. But in fact, this process is not only time-consuming, but also very dangerous, because the Grand Line itself is a place where good and bad people are mixed, and there are many conflicts and contradictions. Secondly, Calm Belt is the old lair of sea kings, and its strength is not enough. Breaking into Calm Belt is to serve sea kings as a buffet, and ordinary ships that rely on sails as power cannot sail in it. Therefore, in this world, there is actually only one safe route that properly communicates with the major sea areas. That is, with Marie Joyce, the Holy Land above the Red Line, as the center, it runs through the first half of the Grand Line and the New World. This route, known as the World Artery, is a route that can completely connect all major sea areas within the shortest voyage and in the shortest time, and it is very safe. It is also because this is very important, together with the geographical advantage of the hub of the world, Marie Joyce has been prosperous for 800 years, and it is worthy of the name of the Holy Land. However, this artery of the world, carried by Marie Joyce, is also very criticized. As the saying goes, monopoly is always the most expensive. Monopoly holds the only safe route in the world that can communicate with all major sea areas. Of course, the government of the world will charge high tolls to those who want to use this route. There are roughly 2 kinds of charging items. The first one is that you don't pass the boat. That's right, because of the existence of the Red Line, it can be said that it is very difficult for ships to cross this route. Therefore, in most cases, the caravan arrives at the port of Marie Joyce, and then begins to unload, and then the people and goods it was transported to the target port on the other side, reloaded with cargo and personnel into new ships, and set off again. That is to say, it is better than a boat. The price of such charges is relatively cheap. At present, many large chambers of commerce in the world will arrange their own cargo receiving fleets in various seaports around Marie Joyce to adapt to this model. The second type is the most expensive service in this route. When the ship arrives at the port of Marie Joyce, the port will use a large crane to lift your ship directly from the port, and then transport it to the target port by land and enter the sea again. That is to say, both people and boats pass. The price of this kind of service is far higher than the price of a boat. It is said that depending on the size of the boat, there will often be a fee of hundreds of millions of berries. At this time, Doflamingo was standing on the deck of his own flamingo, and the flamingo was fixed by a huge crane from Marie Joyce, slowly rising along the track of the Red Line. That's right, the young master, who is not short of money, chose to cross to West Blue with his people in the boat. Anyway, his flamingo is not big. Judging from the size of the ship, it is just a small three-masted sailing ship. The price is clearly marked, which is only 10 million Baileys, which the Donquixote family can still afford. In fact, with the current strength of the Donquixote family, it is completely possible to cross the Calm Belt and arrive at West Blue. In fact, many of the Donquixote family's smuggling businesses use foreign ships for the convenience of crossing the Calm Belt. As for the Sea Kings in the Calm Belt, in fact, for thousands of years, countless smuggling businesses have explored the relatively safe routes with fewer Sea Kings from the Calm Belt, and paired them with some good players who can still pass the time, or prepare the corresponding sacrifices in advance, and cross the Calm Belt. Although the risk is still extremely high, it is not a near-death thing. After all, the so-called smuggling earns such high-risk rewards. However, this method is still a bit too time-consuming, and it often takes half a year or more, or even a year or two. In comparison, it is faster to spend money to go from Marie Joyce. Dover. This kind of machinery that can hoist ships from the port to the Red Line is really powerful. Have you lived on this before? A boy wearing sunglasses and combing mushroom hair was a little shocked looking at everything in front of him. He couldn't help asking Doflamingo. In the Donquixote family, those members who are relatively close to Doflamingo know that, in fact, the young master of his family does not refuse to recall the painful past, and never regards those things in the past as truly untouchable scars. At this time, the mushroom head talking to Doflamingo can actually be regarded as Doflamingo's intimate brother, so there is no need to worry about these things when talking. He is young Virgo. Virgo and Doflamingo are the same age, so they can be said to have grown up together. In addition, Virgo seems to be very talented in hockey, and Doflamingo has never let up. So over the years, Doflamingo and Virgo can say they are inseparable and make progress together. That's right, speaking of it, this is the first time I've come back since I was kicked out of here. As for the crane, it doesn't have much technical content. Doflamingo took out a cigarette from his pocket and bit it on the mouth. He has been smoking since he was 8 years old. It can be said that he is a young and old smoker. Maybe he will die of lung cancer in the future? Marie Joyce's crane really doesn't have much technical content. Just like the automatic walkway, it appears to be advanced technology, but in fact, if Doflamingo remembers correctly, this crane seems to be operated by several giant slaves. To put it bluntly, yes, it's an oversized winch. The slave trade is really a lucrative business, and it's the same with Marie Joyce, Doflamingo said with emotion in his heart. As a member of North Blue's dark world, or even a boss in North Blue's dark world, Doflamingo has naturally been exposed to this aspect. In fact, the Donquixote family did engage in the slave trade. On the westernmost side of North Blue, near the Calm Belt, there is a super large island, which can be called a mainland, no less than Alabasta. There are a group of wild and uncivilized savages living on the island. They are dark-skinned and lazy, but the island is rich in products. Even if you don't have to work hard, you can live in style. At the same time, the dense fog around the island persists all year round, and there are many hidden reefs in Uzumaki near the sea, making it very difficult to approach. However, about 2 years ago, this piece of North Blue fog that had not dissipated for hundreds of years, for some reason, within just 3 months, it all dissipated, and only then did the huge island be exposed. The Donquixote family surveyed and investigated the island for the first time, and finally captured these black slaves, sold them to various manors and plantations in North Blue, and used them as slaves. In a sense, Don Quixote Doflamingo started the North Blue slave trade. In the slave trade of many races, a brand new source of goods has been added, called black slaves. It is a little strange to say that among the many slave trades, the Don Quixote family seems to only do the black slave trade. But these do not hinder Doflamingo's understanding of the slave market. For example, a giant slave will be worth 50 million pele 20 years later. Now, the market price can only be sold for about 20 million pele. In other words, the huge winch on the Marie Joyce is almost 2 to 300 million labor costs. The rest is pure profit. Earning black-hearted money by exploiting others is always very profitable. As the boat slowly ascended, the Marie Joys drew closer. Vaguely, Doflamingo seemed to feel the familiar sea breeze from his childhood, filled with a disgusting smell. That's the smell of celestial dragons. The so-called first impression is extremely important, and back then, as soon as the brand new soul of Doflamingo opened his eyes, he saw a group of celestial dragons wantonly cursing and humiliating around him. So at this time, even if Doflamingo has broken the established trajectory of fate, he still hates and loathes celestial dragons. Leaving Marie Joy's back then was not a bad thing. After all, how can Don Quixote be made great again by being with those insects? Doflamingo looked at the Holy Land in the distance and murmured inwardly. One day, he will come back here dignifiedly. I can sit on the high void throne, why can't he sit on Doflamingo? I want to be the king of this world too. Marie Joy is still extremely prosperous. Merchants from all over the world transport countless dazzling commodities here for sale. It can be said that the supplies are extremely abundant. In theory, Marie Joy's is the center of the world economy, but it is not only the center of the economy. The superiority of the geographical location and the political status maintained by the powerful government of the world, through the World Summit every 4 years, it can be seen that this Marie Joy's is also the center of world politics. In the end, the prosperous economy, abundant materials, and high social status have caused a large number of princes and nobles to try their best to live in Marie Joy's, and the gathering of great nobles from all over the world will also bring their respective cultures. Come. If nobles want to enjoy life, there will naturally be pianists, novelists, dancers and other cultural talents gathered here. Therefore, the Holy Land of Marie Joy's has very intense cultural exchanges and collisions. To be honest, many cultural treasures have indeed been born, and many people also regard this place as a sacred place of culture. It can be said that Marie Joy's is full of filth, and under the glamorous surface hides heinous darkness and evil, but this holy place does have the elegance and calmness that belongs to the holy place. In order to avoid some unnecessary troubles, Doflamingo entered the cabin of the ship and did not show up after the ship was hoisted on the red line. After queuing for about 2 hours, Doflamingo, who was sitting in the cabin and looking at a parchment, felt a sense of weightless falling, and then the ship swayed a bit, and then began to descend steadily. There was no doubt that they had crossed the red line, and by this time, directly below would be Marie Joy's port in the West Blue. There were 2 light knocks on the door, and before Doflamingo could respond, Virgo walked in with a dinner plate. "Dover, do you want something to eat?" Virgo looked at Doflamingo, who was reading a book, and asked. When he said this, there were still some food residues on Virgo's face, like breadcrumbs. Doflamingo glanced at Virgo, then said, "You've committed 2 old mistakes again, Virgo." "What 2 old problems?" Virgo said a little strangely. "First, there is no food on your dinner plate, so you are going to ask me to lick it clean. Second, there are crumbs on your face, please clean it up." Doflamingo said a little helplessly. Virgo is a loyal and talented guy. Doflamingo can feel that from time to time. He has an aura of being able to stand alone. Combined with the development in the original story, Virgo does have this ability. But it's a little funny to say that this guy is young, but his memory is very touching, and he often forgets things. For example, sometimes he and Doflamingo practiced hockey power in the courtyard. Halfway through the practice, he suddenly wanted to do something else, and Doflamingo asked him what he was doing. He said that it was time for him to practice kendo, and he wanted to find out where he kept his saber. Hearing this answer, Doflamingo could only tell him helplessly, first, he had never bought any saber, and second, he was not a swordsman. So there is no matter or plan to practice kendo at all. After hearing Doflamingo's words, Virgo was obviously stunned for a moment, looked at the empty dinner plate he brought with some annoyance, and then took off the crumbs that were as big as meatballs on his face. Then, his wise eyes looked at the breadcrumbs and the empty dinner plate in his hand, then his pupils lit up, he looked at Doflamingo, and said proudly, "No, Dove, I didn't forget anything, I just wanted to please eat breadcrumbs." Hearing this, Doflamingo showed a look of surprise on his face, and then the corners of his mouth twitched a few times. How should I put it? Virgo sometimes has a lot of self-esteem. For example, although he is young, he is facing when dealing with people of lower status than him, he would always ask others to address him as Mr. Virgo. Like now, Doflamingo points out he's made 2 old, irrelevant mistakes, but the guy wants to quibble. "Sometimes, you really should put down your boring self-esteem," Doflamingo complained. Virgo smiled slightly, but did not respond. He casually threw the empty dinner plate on the table beside him, then looked at the book in Doflamingo's hand, and asked curiously, "Is there anything interesting about this book?" "Some words, very interesting." Doflamingo responded very casually. "Like what?" Virgo asked again. "Like." Doflamingo thought for a moment, then looked up. Through the orange sunglasses, Virgo seemed to vaguely see Doflamingo's eyes. At this moment, Doflamingo continued. There is a sentence in this book that impressed me. That is, when we are babies, we instinctively know that we have to cry and destroy. To get attention. Hearing this, Virgo looked at Doflamingo with some puzzlement and said, "Is there anything worth thinking about?" "Of course." Doflamingo nodded, and then said, "Virgo, tell me, why did the baby choose to cry?" Virgo frowned strangely, and then said, "It's human instinct. Didn't I say that in the sentence just now?" "No, it's because the communication and demands cannot be met," Doflamingo said with an evil smile on the corner of his mouth. Then, without waiting for Virgo to ask any more questions, Doflamingo said to himself, "He is hungry, he can't speak, he can't communicate with the people around him, so he cries, destroys, and attracts the people around him as much as possible. Attention, and when people notice him, they try to accommodate his needs. Does he need a diaper change? Or does he want to eat?" Virgo still looked puzzled. He hesitated for a moment, looked at Doflamingo and said, So? Is there something esoteric about this, or is there something to dig up?" "So, I came up with an answer. When the world is unwilling to meet my demands, I should also make trouble," Doflamingo said with a smile. Hearing this, Virgo laughed, nodded, and then asked, "Then what is your request?" "You guys are very clear about my request, aren't you?" Doflamingo raised his eyebrows. Yes, it was clear when they made Doflamingo their king. Donquixote Doflamingo, he is a born king, and he deserves to be the new king of this world. This is the answer that many cadres of the Donquixote family agree with from the bottom of their hearts. "I often see such a scene on the street, my lord," Virgo said in a serious tone, and used honorifics. Doflamingo picked up the teacup by the table, took a sip and said, "What?" "The crying child pestered his parents to get them to buy new toys from the store to meet his needs, but what he got in exchange was a severe beating," Virgo said softly. "Fufurofurfurfurfur, your advice is really unique." Doflamingo naturally understood the meaning of these words, and couldn't help laughing. Crying may be able to meet the needs, but it may also be exchanged for a severe beating. So since when did the child stop being beaten? Probably from when he became more mature. He's taller, he's stronger, he has a certain social status, he's financially independent. All in all, it comes down to getting stronger. "I accept your advice, Virgo. You were right. Ambition that does not match your strength can only be exchanged for severe beatings." Doflamingo put down the teacup in his hand and said softly, "My lord, I have witnessed your perseverance in your pursuit of strength in the past 7 years, so I am even more convinced that sooner or later, you will be able to make a fuss, and take the throne on Marie Joy's into your arms, become your favorite toy," Virgo said without hesitation. Ohara is not too far from Marie Joy's. After sailing from Marie Joy's for about 10 days, you can see the island. It's quite unique. Doflamingo stood on the deck, looking at Ohara from a distance. His waist is very tall and straight, standing there gives a very energetic feeling, wearing a wine-red suit, with a flamingo feather coat on his shoulders, one hand in the pocket of his trousers, the other hand, holding a cigarette. I don't know if it's Doflamingo's original habit, or the sequelae after time travel. In short, Doflamingo feels that he can't leave his cigarettes. It's really distinctive, and people can recognize it at a glance. "It's Ohara," Virgo said standing beside Doflamingo. His height is also different from ordinary people, but after all, he is not as exaggerated as Doflamingo, and he is about 2 meters 3 or 4 now. At this time, Virgo was wearing a white plaid shirt, with a cold expression on his face, looking cool. The reason why Ohara is unique is that from a distance, a huge ancient tree completely covers the center of the island, which is very conspicuous. And that tree is the Tree of Omniscience, known as the treasure of human culture and history. At the same time, the closer you get to Ohara, the more ships appear on the surrounding waters. Obviously, Ohara is still quite lively. I have to say that people in West Blue are very enthusiastic. When Doflamingo's flamingo passed by a fishing boat, several fishermen on the boat smiled and waved to him. "Fufurfur. It seems that my notoriety has not spread to West Blue," Doflamingo laughed. Doflamingo's reputation in North Blue can be said to be able to stop children from crying. In June last year, Doflamingo hanged his 2 smuggling business partners in the port pier on North Blue Jonathan Island, cut their legs into skeletons with a knife, and fed the leg meat to the pier school of fish. In the end, they stopped bleeding, treated their wounds, and hung them on the pier for 3 days in the sun, killing them to death. He did this because the 2 partners swallowed a sum of money that they should not have taken, however small it was. Donquixote family walks on the dark side, and if they want to gain a firm foothold in the dark world, they must be ruthless, poisonous, and brutal enough. Therefore, Doflamingo often deliberately does some FC King things to show his evil, wild, and cruelty, so that his reputation can always maintain a certain deterrent force. But in the final analysis, to put it bluntly, it is because his own strength is not enough. If he has the strength of Whitebeard, then even if he does nothing, others will not dare to provoke him. Our business is not big in West Blue, so it's understandable that we don't know about it, Virgo said calmly. North Blue is a sea of evil. Relatively speaking, it is more chaotic and brutal, while West Blue is also not a calm place. Mafia culture prevails in West Blue, and most West Blue people have a gangster, color, romantic and violent. Often, for a fisherman in a port, the dog opposite his seventh uncle's house may be raised by the mafia. It can be said that the people here are more or less related to the mafia. Donquixote family has always wanted to do business around the world, and West Blue is naturally included, so Donquixote family also has a certain amount of research on West Blue. According to incomplete statistics, there are at least more than 50,000 mafia gangs in the entire West Blue, and most of them survive and develop in the family mode, entrenched in the islands and kingdoms of West Blue. Except for a few islands and kingdoms, such as Ohara or something, almost the entire West Blue is involved with the mafia. Therefore, if you want to do business in West Blue and make it bigger and stronger, it is basically impossible to bypass the mafia. And standing at the top of all the mafia families is the mafia known as the 5 West Blue families. Doflamingo doesn't care much about the other 4. Only the Capone family is the one he thinks is more suitable as a partner. This time he came to West Blue. If he had the chance, he hoped to have a chat with the Capone family. After all, in about 20 years, the Capone Big of the Capone family will become the true and only godfather of West Blue, leading the Capone family to dominate the West Blue Mafia. The Donquixote family's current business is mainly smuggling, mixed with some other scattered bad activities. And Doflamingo has always wanted to diversify his business, and he hopes to get involved in the arms industry. He had tried a few times in North Blue before, but it can only be said to be small, and he has never made it big. In the final analysis, it is because there is a Germa kingdom on North Blue, and North Blue's arms business is currently, most of them are in their hands. Their own technological strength is also very strong, their arms are more advanced, and their competitiveness far exceeds that of the Donquixote family. Speaking of background, to be honest, the Donquixote family led by Doflamingo has no profound background at all. In total, it only took 7 or 8 years to make a fortune. The Germa kingdom has a history of hundreds of years. Even if it is now down and out, it will not be so easy to clean up for a while. I'm afraid it can't be said, but Doflamingo does have some fears for Germa. In contrast, in West Blue, the 5 major mafia families are very powerful. According to the investigation, the Capone family has existed for more than 300 years and has a very strong background. The development is also good. The Capone family has mastered more than 30% of the West Blue arms market. They have mature military production lines, arsenals, and logistics. Doflamingo very much hopes to reach a cooperation with them to sell West Blue's arms to North Blue and become a large arms seller of North Blue. It doesn't matter if you don't have a production line. Let's spread the channels first. It's a chicken and egg thing. Sell West Blue's arms first. Grab the business with the Vinsmoke family, and sell your own products when you can produce them yourself in the future. Doflamingo isn't kidding about wanting to be king of the world. To realize this kind of ambition, timing, luck, strength, and influence are actually indispensable. There is no need to say too much about the timing. In the next 20 years, it will be the surging tide of the era. Destiny and opportunities are hidden in the tide of this era. It depends on who can catch it. It's not just him, Doflamingo. There will be countless heroes and heroes on this sea, galloping all over the world, fighting against each other. Things like luck are illusory, just depend on fate. I am a conqueror who is only 1 in a million people, and I don't know how many lifetimes it takes to meet a time traveler, so it can't be too bad, right? As for strength, Doflamingo has never let up. He has been motivating himself, and trying to find ways to keep leaping towards the ladder of the strong. Finally, there is power. Azu once said, well, are you good at fighting? Will it be used for a fart? Coming out to hang out is to talk about power. Will Red Earl Beloric Redfield fight? Can you fight? But what's the use? In contrast, celestial dragons are mostly petty dogs, but they can call Marine Admiral around. This is power. If you want to form a power, you must have connections and money. In the past few years, Doflamingo has actually been accumulating. No matter whether you want to be a pirate or do anything in the future, if you want to walk steadily, fast and well, these are indispensable. The Flamingo soon berthed in the port of Ohara, and Doflamingo stepped off the ship with a calm and graceful step. To be honest, it took him a lot of time to correct his habitual arrogant horoscope. Unlike those common islands in the past, Doflamingo can feel the unique charm of Ohara just after getting off the boat. Obviously, he is a coolie who is responsible for unloading goods and moving bricks at the pier, but when he is resting on a wooden pile, he can even make a few academic conjectures, which opened Doflamingo's eyes. This island of cultured people is cultured. The tree of omniscience is said to be over 5,000 years old, and the structure of the tree itself is also very peculiar. I don't know if it has been specially modified, or it is the wonder of nature. In short, the inside of this tree is like a naturally formed natural treehouse, and it also presents the pattern of a large library. The tree of omniscience is a large library with the largest collection of books in the world. At this time, in a separate study room in the tree of omniscience, Dr. Clover, Ohara's archaeological leader, is discussing something here. The system of the world government is very large. It maintains a giant alliance composed of 150 to 200 franchise countries all the year round. Of course, generally speaking, this number is roughly maintained at around 170 franchise countries. But please don't get me wrong, although there are so many franchise countries under the world government's banner all the year round, in fact, there are still a large number of islands that rely on the franchise countries, which are also under the banner of the world government. Like Naval Headquarters Malinford, it is not a country, but it belongs to the government of the world. The island of shipbuilding, the capital of seven waters, and the holy land of archaeology, Ohara. These places also do not belong to any country, but they are all planned as autonomous islands, and they are also attached to the huge system of the world government. There are so many islands like this in the world. And Dr. Clover is not only the scholar leader of Ohara, but also the chairman of the Ohara Island Self-Government Committee appointed by the world government law. To put it simply, he is the owner of this island. Albia, the documents and rubbings you brought back this time are very important. We have translated these materials, and a lot of information in the historical text shows that more than 800 years ago, that is, the blank one, within 100 years, there is indeed a huge kingdom that once existed. Dr. Clover said solemnly. Sitting opposite him was a woman with a pretty face and a mature temperament. Judging from what Dr. Clover called her just now, she was undoubtedly Nicole Albia, the direct participant in the future Ohara destruction incident. Albia nodded, and then responded softly. It seems that the government of the world is deliberately concealing the history that once existed, and the existence of the text of the history is the ancestors at the beginning. To protect this history, we must want. Before Albia finished speaking, there was a sudden knock on the door of the study. Dr. Clover frowned, quickly put away some papers on the table, and then cleared his throat and said, "Come in." As soon as he finished speaking, a scholar pushed the door open and said to Dr. Clover, "Doctor, there is a guest outside the tree of omniscience who claims to be Donquixote Doflamingo. He wants to see you and says he has something to talk to you about. Let's talk." Dr. Clover touched his chin, and then said, "Don Quixote, are they celestial dragons? It doesn't look like his outfit and style, and he said he is from North Blue." The scholar shook his head in response. "Oh?" Dr. Clover seemed to remember something, and then said, "It's that kid who killed his father." The fact that Don Quixote Hanagu took his family of celestial dragons, down to Earth, was actually not a particularly secretive thing. You see, their family went to North Blue and almost didn't get beaten by the local troublemakers. If you die, you will know. This news, in fact, is not concealed, and ordinary people can know it. However, Don Quixote Doflamingo returned to Marie Joy's with his father's head in his hands, and wanted to do the celestial dragons thing again, which is considered more secretive. Anyway, the vast majority of ordinary people have never heard of it. But Dr. Clover is different. He himself is the leader of archaeologists in the world, and he also has extraordinary influence in the cultural field. From time to time, he can be invited to participate in World Summit as a scholar, and even participate in many high-level activities of the world government. Wool and cloth. Anyway, his status is still very high, and he knows a little bit about some bloody incidents that happened on Marie Joy's back then. So after thinking for a while, he figured out the identity of Doflamingo. Dr. Clover himself doesn't have a good impression of celestial dragons, let alone a patricide kid who killed his father and wanted to return to the celestial dragons group with his head. So Dr. Clover quickly waved his hands in disgust and said, "I don't remember any connection or friendship with him, and I don't have this related meeting appointment today. Tell that Doflamingo, I'm not interested in discussing anything with him. Call, don't bother me again." The scholar nodded, then closed the door and went out. Seeing this, Albia asked, "Doctor, is this appropriate? Although that guy is no longer celestial dragons, it is inevitable that there will be some involvement between him and the world government." "It doesn't matter if you get involved, I can handle it," Dr. Clover said confidently. After a slight pause, he added, "Don't say he is not a celestial dragons now. Even if he is a celestial dragons, what can he do to me?" At the same time, Doflamingo also waited for the scholar who sent the message outside the tree of omniscience. "I'm sorry, Mr. Doflamingo, Dr. Clover is busy. The scholar was still a little tactful in his words, and he didn't choke Doflamingo so bluntly. But Doflamingo also knew what was going on, smiled and said, "F you Furfur, it's okay. It must be because my sincerity is not enough. Please also pass this letter to the doctor. I think the doctor read this letter after the letter, you will be very happy to see me." The scholar originally wanted to refuse, but seeing Doflamingo's swearing appearance, he hesitated again. Left and right are just a matter of running errands. If he refuses, what if he delays something? So he hesitated for a while, but still took the envelope, and then said, "Okay, then please wait here." Soon, Dr. Clover was talking about the main text of history, and there was another knock on the door. Being interrupted one after another, Dr. Clover was also a little impatient. Seeing that the scholar from just now came in again, he directly asked, "What's wrong?" "That Mr. Doflamingo said," the scholar said immediately. "I've already said it, no see. Why is that guy still so obsessed?" Dr. Clover immediately interrupted the scholar, and said a little annoyed. At the same time, the scholar hurriedly handed the letter in his hand to Dr. Clover and said, "He said that if you read this letter, you will be very happy to see him." "HMPH, you arrogant man. I want to see how this brat who doesn't know the heights of the heavens and the earth dares to say such a thing. Who does he think I am? This old man is an archaeologist." Dr. Clover cursed. Opened the letter. When he saw the words above, his face froze, the corners of his mouth twitched for a moment, and silence replaced the previous words. Albia was the first to notice this change, and she looked at Dr. Clover strangely. Then Dr. Clover quickly recovered his calm expression, quickly put away the letter, and straightened his neck. After finishing this set of movements, he looked at the scholar in surprise again, and said, "What are you still doing in a daze? Why don't you quickly invite Mr. Donquixote Doflamingo in?" "Ah?" The scholar was also a little confused, but he quickly nodded and left. Walking outside the door, the scholar was secretly slandering himself. Unexpectedly, the doctor's face change was so smooth. Could it be that the difference in knowledge between me and the doctor lies in this skill? It seems that I am not smooth enough in life. However, when the scholar left, Dr. Clover's originally calm face darkened instantly. Before Albia could speak, he said, "That guy knows that we are studying the text of history." After hearing this, Albia was shocked and said, "How is it possible? All the scholars involved in this matter are trustworthy. I don't know what's going on now, I can only wait until I see this person later," Dr. Clover said with a heavy heart. Being invited to enter the Tree of Omniscience, Doflamingo was also filled with emotion. It seems that no matter where he is, rules are dead, but people are alive. If you are not a scholar, you will not be allowed to enter the Tree of Omniscience? Then don't I just come in now? The interior of the Tree of Omniscience is very large, as if divided into many tables and rooms. Many scholars gathered around and discussed many things that sounded very tall. But obviously, Doflamingo was not interested in this kind of thing. He followed the scholar who led the way, and soon came to the door of Dr. Clover's study. After knocking on the door, the doctor's voice came from inside, and then Doflamingo pushed the door open and entered. At this moment, only Dr. Clover was left in the room, but Doflamingo himself didn't know that Albia was here before, so he didn't have any superfluous feelings. The moment Dr. Clover entered Doflamingo's door, he stared fixedly at him, as if he wanted to find some answer from him. Faced with such scrutiny, Doflamingo did not feel any pressure, and said in a very elegant and calm manner, "Dr. Clover, I have known you for a long time, and it is a great honor to meet you in this temple of knowledge and culture. Although your appointment method is impolite," Dr. Clover sneered. Doflamingo raised his hand and pinched his chin, pretending to be puzzled. "I don't think I'm being rude, do I? You look so hypocritical at such a young age, you are worthy of being a nobleman in the world before." Dr. Clover deliberately mentioned Doflamingo's background. But to his surprise, touching Doflamingo's scar, he didn't mean to be irritated or ashamed. "Thank you, doctor, for your reminder. I will try my best to appear more sincere in the future," Doflamingo responded naturally. Dr. Clover didn't intend to quarrel with him here, so he raised his hand as a gesture to invite Doflamingo to sit down. Doflamingo also sat on the guest seat very generously. At the same time, Dr. Clover couldn't help but said, "About the letter just now, you are Fufurfur." Doflamingo smiled directly, and interrupted Dr. Clover's words. "Doctor, please don't misunderstand me. I am not interested in any scholarly or archaeological activities in Ohara. Come here, it's not to discuss anything with you, doctor." Having said that, the corners of his mouth curled up into a slightly sinister arc, and then he said softly, "What are you talking about, 100 years of blankness?" Dr. Clover's eyes were lowered, and he didn't answer. After about 10 breaths, even the atmosphere in the study seemed dull, before Dr. Clover said, "I don't know what Mr. Doflamingo wants to talk to me about. Woolen cloth?" Cough. Doflamingo sat up a little bit straighter, and then said, Doctor, you are a well-known top scholar in the field of archaeology. Everyone I know praises you for being knowledgeable. This time, I will come. I also want to ask you, Doctor, have you ever heard of Sleeping Ancient Town? Dr. Clover was still thinking. Doflamingo is playing tricks. Maybe he wants to blackmail Ohara? Or threaten Ohara to do something dirty for him. Even he was already mentally prepared. If things weren't so unacceptable, it would not be impossible for him to collude with Doflamingo in order to preserve this secret news. The result was good, he was mentally prepared, but this guy Doflamingo came to consult about Sleeping Ancient Town? You. Dr. Clover's expression was a bit tangled. He looked at Doflamingo and said hesitantly, You're here to ask these questions? Yeah. Doflamingo said matter-of-factly. Dr. Clover was silent for a moment. Since Doflamingo didn't want to talk about it blank 100 years, he had better act as if nothing happened, at least for now. So he thought for a while, and then said, Sleeping Ancient Town. About 200 years ago, there was indeed such a place. It seems that you really know, Doctor. Doflamingo raised his brows and asked excitedly, I really want to find this place. I wonder what the doctor can teach me. Dr. Clover thought for a while and said, More than 200 years ago, for some reason, a cult originated in Sleeping Ancient Town. They worshipped blood and plague, and successively set off terrifying cult attacks on several surrounding islands, causing hundreds of thousands of casualties were caused, and it was also because of their unscrupulous style that they attracted the attention of the church. The church defined the cult in Sleeping Ancient Town as a heretic, and formed a judgment army, dispatching a large number of fleets to attack Sleeping Ancient Town and wipe out this cult. Doflamingo was also a little surprised when he heard this, but he seemed to understand more. Dr. Vegapunk once put forward a theory in the original story, saying that the birth of devil fruit was transformed by human desire. Although there is still a lack of factual basis. But there's something to be said for the claim being made by the so-called world's smartest, and arguably the most esoteric of devil fruit research. From this point of view, a strange cult was born in Sleeping Ancient Town more than 200 years ago, and it still worships blood and plague. Could it be related to the devil fruit of the Phantom Beast? Maybe the reason why such a vampire fruit popped up in Sleeping Ancient Town was because of the desires of these cultists before? I can't be sure whether there is a connection, but Doflamingo thought about it. I'm not a scientist. I don't care how the Phantom Beast's fruit came from, just eat it and it's over. I didn't think about it anymore, and soon, Dr. Clover continued. The church's trial army wiped out all the cultists in Sleeping Ancient Town. No, to be precise, they wiped out the entire Sleeping Ancient Town. It's been wiped out, and in order to prevent this heresy from coming back to life in the future, the church has issued an application to the world government, requesting to erase the existence of Sleeping Ancient Town from a comprehensive perspective. Buster Call. Doflamingo said, slightly surprised. Dr. Clover nodded, and then said, It can be said that the birth of Buster Call has something to do with what happened more than 200 years ago. In short, the world government has considered the various crimes committed by this cult before agreeing to the church's application. They dispatched Marine to assist the church in erasing the entire Sleeping Ancient Town. From maps, texts, and books, all traces of Sleeping Ancient Town's existence were erased. Only Ohara barely preserved a little bits of this evil history. According to Dr. Clover, it seems that the Buster Call system was born after this. Doflamingo reckoned that maybe it was because he had tasted the sweetness from this kind of thing. The Buster was really created behind the world government. Call. So, where the hell is Sleeping Ancient Town? Doflamingo asked again. I don't remember exactly, but Ohara does have records about it, and I'll help you find these books later, Dr. Clover said. Seeing this, Doflamingo no longer urged, nodded and said, Then thank you, Doctor. If Ohara can help me identify and find the ruins of Sleeping Ancient Town, I will definitely. Before Doflamingo could say what reward to give, Dr. Clover interrupted him and said, As long as you can stop meddling with anything about Ohara, and don't mention these secrets about Ohara to the world government, that's fine. Hearing this, Doflamingo smiled and said, F you Furfur, of course it's okay. The secret about Ohara will not be passed on from me. Doflamingo didn't stay in Dr. Clover's study, and left soon. He planned to find a random place in Ohara for 2 days, and waited for Dr. Clover to give himself a result. Not long after Doflamingo left the house, Nicole Orbia knocked on the door and came in. She glanced at Dr. Clover with a little worry, and then asked, Doctor, how is the situation? Dr. Clover stroked his beard, pondered for a moment and said, The situation is much better than what we were worried about before. He doesn't seem to intend to use our Zinmi here as a threat to force us to do some messy things, but I just inquired about it. There is information and news about Sleeping Ancient Town. Albia breathed a sigh of relief, but quickly said, Maybe there is no danger this time, but it may not be the last time. That guy is not trustworthy after all. It is indeed as you said, but there is nothing we can do about it, Dr. Clover said helplessly. Will he trust Doflamingo? Certainly not. He is not familiar with Doflamingo, especially the original impression is not good. It can even be said to be very bad. In Dr. Clover's view, Doflamingo is a ruthless person who uses any means to achieve his goals. Even his own father, if you say kill, kill, and at that time, he was only 10 years old, right? Now that so many years have passed, who knows how evil this guy has become. Although Doflamingo seemed to be very peaceful just now, it was not enough for Dr. Clover to have the slightest trust in him. But the problem is that Dr. Clover can't do anything about Doflamingo. Could it be possible to fight him? Ohara is not good at force either. Doflamingo walked around the town of Ohara twice, and felt that it was not interesting, and wondered if he could meet Nico Robin or something, but after thinking about it again, she is still a little girl of 3 or 4 years old, so it is impossible big, so I put my mind to it. I had dinner with Virgo and some younger brothers, and soon, I stayed in the hotel that was booked out. Early the next morning, Doflamingo had just finished his breakfast when the scholar who helped him spread the word yesterday came to his door, saying that Dr. Clover had invited Doflamingo to meet him in his study. When Doflamingo entered the Tree of Omniscience again and came to Dr. Clover's study again, he saw Nicole Albia. Although he was a little surprised in his heart, he didn't reveal anything on the surface. The corners of Doflamingo's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a slightly evil smile, "F.U. Furfur, doctor, it seems that you must have gained something. Ohara's efficiency, really good. Please sit down, Mr. Doflamingo. Let me introduce. This is our Ohara scholar, Ms. Nicole Albia. She also knows something about Sleeping Ancient Town." Dr. Clover introduced. "It's an honor to meet you, Scholar Albia." Doflamingo nodded lightly. Albia also greeted Doflamingo naturally. After sitting down, Doflamingo looked at Drive. Clover, and the doctor was also very interested, and said directly, "We have found the information about Sleeping Ancient Town yesterday and summarized it. At present, we can clearly say that Sleeping Ancient Town is located on the Grand Line. In the second half of the New World, it is an island without a magnetic field, so it cannot be found by using the record pointer. However, according to some information we have, we can know that the coordinates of this island are." Soon, Dr. Clover gave Doflamingo a general description of the situation in Sleeping Ancient Town. Generally speaking, it is very difficult to find. What are the coordinates? What are the special ocean currents? What are the astrology? You have to go to the scene and observe the surrounding natural conditions in order to get the most accurate location. Doflamingo's head is a little big when he hears it. Is this Sleeping Ancient Town so fancy? But when I think about it, it seems that it is not incomprehensible. A person like the Red Earl, who stands at the top, wanted to find Sleeping Ancient Town, and he spent a lot of thought, and finally found it by luck. And if Sleeping Ancient Town is really easy to find, the ruins of Sleeping Ancient Town should have been discovered in the past 200 years, but the facts have proved that since the relevant records were destroyed, the ruins of Sleeping Ancient Town have not been rediscovered so far. Found it, it can be seen that its difficulty is indeed very high. Of course, Doflamingo soon noticed some unusual smells. He raised his hand slightly, helped the frame on the bridge of his nose, and then interrupted. "Doctor, from these information, I can see that you are really helping me investigate the situation in Sleeping Ancient Town. If you have anything to say, you may as well just say it." Being pierced by Doflamingo, Dr. Clover rubbed his nose in embarrassment, and then said seriously, "I want to say, regarding the search for relics and lost lands in this area, we Ohara have had a very mature experience for hundreds of thousands of years. System and very professional technical team. Good guy. Just wait for me. Tell me that the difficulty of finding this relic is so high. The main reason is to recommend your Ohara professional team, right? How should I put it?" Doflamingo couldn't be sure whether the difficulty mentioned by Dr. Clover just now were deliberately raised to fool himself. But what can be confirmed is that Ohara should be really professional and powerful in this regard. After all, they are engaged in archaeology, and they are still the top in the world. Relics like Sleeping Ancient Town may have developed hundreds or thousands of them. The professionalism must be there, and it is very high. And in the original story, the Red Earl did read the memory of Nico Robin, and with his knowledge and background as a scholar, he deciphered the ruins of Sleeping Ancient Town and obtained the Devil Fruit. Wouldn't it be much more convenient if there were scholars from Ohara to help? Just as Doflamingo was thinking about this, Dr. Clover finally said, "Archaeology is a very expensive thing, and our Ohara also undertakes many external projects. If Mr. Doflamingo is willing to spend 50 million Baileys, our Ohara, a whole professional team led by the Albia scholar, will be dispatched to assist you in the exploration of the ruins of Sleeping Ancient Town." "So you're waiting for me here?" Doflamingo smiled inwardly. Did he want me to spend money? 50 million Baileys, not much, but not too little, but the Donquixote family can still afford it. So Doflamingo immediately smiled and was ready to say yes. However, at the moment when he was about to speak, he seemed to think of something. Number. Money is not important, and Dr. Clover is not someone who values these things. Judging from his attitude towards me yesterday, he should wish to have less involvement with me. Why would he take the initiative to bring up these things today? Think about it carefully. If you agree to this matter today, then the follow-up exploration and search of sleeping ancient town will undoubtedly be completely led by the nose by Ohara. This is of course a very dangerous thing. In the professional field of scholars, if Ohara has some bad thoughts about himself, if force cannot solve him, will he use these means to achieve his goal? For example, deliberately lead yourself into a very dangerous sea area, and use the power of the sea to destroy yourself? Or, trap yourself in the ruins. Die of thirst, starve yourself to death. If there are any mechanism traps in the ruins of sleeping ancient town, wouldn't it be more dangerous? Not impossible. Don't look at Dr. Clover's thick eyebrows and big eyes, don't look at Albia's pretty and smooth, but think about it carefully. They are all ruthless people who are willing to sacrifice themselves for Ohara, for the so-called history. From this point of view, it makes sense for them to want to kill themselves to silence them. Isn't it reasonable? Thinking of this, Doflamingo laughed evilly. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doctor, it seems that there is still a lack of trust between us. Doflamingo said softly. Dr. Clover's expression changed slightly, and then he forced a smile and said, I don't quite understand what you mean. Doflamingo just quietly stared at Dr. Clover, and the scene became dull for a while, so that Albia who was on the side felt a little uneasy. Indeed, just like Doflamingo's previous conjecture, Albia and Dr. Clover did have malice towards him. This time Albia is willing to personally take action and go to sleep in the ancient town with Doflamingo, mainly to find opportunities and see if there are any on the way. What an appropriate time to bury Doflamingo in the dust of history, who knew Ohara's mystery from nowhere. Literati don't kill with a knife, and so do scholars. If you want to get rid of a person, there are still many ways and means in the other's professional field. But let it be clear, Doflamingo is the little overlord in the dark world of North Blue. Over the years, he has seen people who try to entrap him in various ways, and he has long been familiar with it. To say that there is some annoyance in my heart, there are indeed, but not much. The main reason is that I am used to this kind of deceit. In terms of understanding, in fact, it is completely understandable. If I were in their position, if I had a choice, I would definitely kill them to silence them. Doflamingo's slender fingers tapped on the table lightly, breaking the dull atmosphere. He didn't intend to ask the bottom line and embarrass everyone. After all, the matter has not reached this point yet. A former partner of mine told me that sometimes, asking for too little price in cooperation often leads to the breakdown of cooperation, and even exacerbates the rift of distrust. Doflamingo said softly. Dr. Clover swallowed, but didn't say anything. But vaguely, he also seemed to feel that there was some truth in these words. Thinking about it carefully, the reason why he doesn't trust Doflamingo so much actually has certain factors. He thinks that Doflamingo's asking price is too light. He used a bargaining chip that is enough to subvert and destroy Ohara, and only asked about the information about sleeping ancient town. No one is worried about whoever puts this on. Doflamingo faintly showed a forceful aura. He is indeed not very strong, but that is for New World. But for Ohara, in front of scholars like Albia and Dr. Clover, Doflamingo still very oppressive. This made Dr. Clover and Albia swallow their saliva, and their hearts became more and more nervous, for fear that this guy Doflamingo would suddenly turn his back on him. At the moment when the cold sweat dripped from Dr. Clover's forehead, Doflamingo also said in a deep voice, "The deal is about to change. In order for you to trust me more, now I have 3 conditions." Before Dr. Clover and Albia opened their mouths, Doflamingo continued. First, I want you Ohara to send the most professional team to sleep ancient town and bring me something back. Second, I want a copy of the practice knowledge of hockey power. Pay attention, it is not the kind of thing that is in the bad streets of New World. It is the practice knowledge that can advance hockey. And the third, I want a copy of Devil, which is the most complete Ohara collection so far fruit illustrated book. Compared with the small demand before, this time Doflamingo's asking price is not low. After hearing this, Dr. Clover hurriedly said, Doflamingo, there's no need for us to make trouble. However, before Dr. Clover finished speaking, Doflamingo said with an evil smile, Dr. Foo-fur-fur-fur. I gave you the chance to be friends, but unfortunately, we seem to be unable to become friends, so now, I have to change a way to get in touch with you, and I have come into contact with Ohara. The 3 conditions I just mentioned, one cannot be missing, as long as one is missing. When Doflamingo said this, his eyes under the sunglasses darkened a lot, and he added in a cold tone. Don't blame me for being too aggressive, the secret's hidden by Ohara. You scholars who illegally study historical texts and ancient texts will know within 24 hours. Show up at Marijoy's CP agency intelligence. Doflamingo made it clear this time, and he also felt that maybe he gave too much good looks to Ohara before, so maybe these scholars are just scumbags. You tell them well, they want to F**k you. If you beat them, they want to do things for you honestly. Dr. Clover's expression fluctuated and he was very flustered, but looking through the sunglasses and looking at Doflamingo's cold eyes, he finally understood that he and Albia seemed to have angered the man in front of him. But after all, he has seen many top scholars in the big world. After a short period of panic and loss, Dr. Clover gradually stabilized his emotions, looked at Doflamingo, and said in a deep voice, "Hockey's Knowledge and Devil Fruit Illustrated Book. No question, but what do you want us to bring you back from sleeping ancient town? How can you be sure that that thing is there? If it doesn't exist at all, wouldn't it be impossible for us to fulfill your condition?" Doflamingo was stunned for a moment. Good guy. Ohara is really generous and has enough background. Did he ask for a little less just now? Needless to say, the Devil Fruit Illustrated Book, all major forces actually have this thing more or less, but the quality is uneven. When Doflamingo was young, he also saw this thing in Marie Joy's. The Devil Fruit Illustrated Book is not static, but it is constantly updated based on the existing information. Top forces, such as the world government and naval headquarters, the Devil Fruit Illustrated Book in their hands is definitely more detailed and richer than other people's, thanks to their strong intelligence capabilities. As a sacred place of knowledge and culture, Ohara may not have very good intelligence capabilities in this regard, but its network of connections is very powerful. The Devil Fruit Illustrated Book they have is likely to be cross-referenced with the illustrated book in the hands of the world government. Doflamingo itself intends to collect devil fruit in the dark world. Whether it is for sale, building a relationship network, or preparing for its own cadres, it needs such a picture book. Of course, he didn't intend to get this illustrated book from Ohara at first, but he planned to wait for the right time later to see if he could connect with the world government. As for the knowledge of hockey's practice, it's still the same sentence. Ohara may not have it, but Dr. Clover will definitely get it. There are thousands of thoughts, but the reality is just a moment. Hearing what the doctor said, Doflamingo said with a smile, "Don't worry, it's true that what I want is in sleeping ancient town. So try to find it." "You." Dr. Clover gave Doflamingo a helpless look, and then said, "What do you want?" "Devil fruit." Doflamingo didn't mean to hide, and there was no need to hide. "I'm holding Ohara's biggest weakness in my hand, so I'm not afraid of them jumping around." Devil fruit. Dr. Clover was a little confused, and Albia was also very surprised. All this for one devil fruit? Perhaps in the hearts of you scholars, devil fruit is not too precious, and I don't intend to argue with you about it. In short, go find this devil fruit, bring it back, and give it to me. Doflamingo said here. He paused for a while, and then said, "It's Zone Bat Fruit Phantom Beast Vampire form. It's in the Devil Fruit Illustrated Book, so I don't need to describe it." Phantom Beast? Dr. Clover was surprised, but not too shocked. It can be said that phantom beasts are indeed more rare, but just like what Doflamingo said, in the eyes of their scholars, devil fruit is not important. At the same time, Albia looked at Doflamingo and asked, "Once we complete these three conditions, how will you guarantee those about Ohara?" Doflamingo sneered, and then said, "I promised it before, but you don't trust me, so that things have become like this, so I don't need to promise anything." As he said that, Doflamingo stood up. His height of nearly 3 meters brought a strong sense of oppression to the two of them. There was an evil smile on his face, and he said softly, "Do as I say, this is the only thing you Ohara can choose, and then just pray. Pray that after I have gained something, my mood will be improved. Being able to stay happy, forget about the previous unpleasantness, and if all goes well, Ohara will be fine." In the restaurant, Doflamingo wiped his mouth with a napkin after finishing his dinner. Virgo on the opposite side still had food scraps all over his face, and he asked curiously, "So, Ohara's exploration team will set off tomorrow, and within half a year, they will bring that devil fruit back to you? You? At least that's what that woman named Albia told me." Doflamingo put down the napkin, picked up the red wine on the table, and said with a sip, "In the past 6 months, Doflamingo is not going to run around anymore, he just waited in Ohara and finished. Because half a year is not long or short, but when it comes to sailing, it is actually a matter of a voyage. If you leave here and return to North Blue, you may not be able to do anything in North Blue, so you have to turn back. After all, it will take time to return." So Doflamingo decided to live in Ohara for half a year, and wait for the fruit to come in hand. "Will you let Ohara go when you get that devil fruit?" Virgo asked again. Doflamingo froze for a moment, looked at Virgo strangely and asked, "Why do you ask such a question? You know what kind of person I am. If I don't need Ohara in the future, I will let it go, let them go, if it's useful. Of course I won't let them go. I'm Don Quixote Doflamingo. I'm not a nice guy. Virgo nodded knowingly, and then said, it seems that I did ask a stupid question. After chatting with Virgo for a while, Doflamingo got up and prepared to leave here. Dover, do you want to practice together? Virgo asked. At times like this in the past, Virgo and Doflamingo would find a place to meditate together after having dinner and resting for a while. Meditation is a kind of spiritual practice, a practice of perception, which helps to improve the strength of one's own observation haki. But today Doflamingo waved his hand and said, I'm going to go to the Tree of Omniscience to see if there are any books in this so-called omniscient library that might interest me. I noticed that you seem to be very interested in reading books recently. You were not like this before, Virgo said with a little emotion. He grew up with Doflamingo, so he naturally knows Doflamingo's previous situation very well. It can be said that in the past 7 years, Doflamingo has spent most of his time practicing, except for the matters that he had to come forward to solve. And in the last half a year or so, Doflamingo seems to have relaxed a bit. Haki's practice is stuck at the bottleneck. At this time, we should guard against arrogance and impetuosity. At the same time, I think that knowledge and thought are also a kind of power. As the saying goes, books are the ladder of human progress. I still want to improve. Doflamingo joked with a smile. In fact, Doflamingo wants to learn more about the world from other aspects. Although he possesses the so-called forward vision, he can be said to be predictive of many things that will happen on the sea in the future. But these years, in the process of constantly merging and contacting with this world, he can clearly feel that the world is far from the so-called comic story. If he wants to understand the world more thoroughly, he cannot stick to his original one. A set of views must constantly advance with the times and integrate with the times. And in this world, there are not many information channels, and books have become the top priority for obtaining information and knowledge. You just want to improve too much, but, isn't it true that non-scholars can enter the Tree of Omniscience? Virgo asked suddenly. Doflamingo laughed, waved his hands and said, I am Ohara's living father now, I can go wherever I want, and I can do whatever I want. The Tree of Omniscience is not open to scholars at night, because they are afraid that when you light up the lamp to study something at night, it will accidentally catch fire, and all the books will be burned at that time. But as Doflamingo said, now he is Ohara's living father, as long as Dr. Clover and others can't think of any way to deal with him, they have to confess him as an ancestor. He can do whatever he wants, and enter the Tree of Omniscience at will. Under the thousands of instructions from the scholars on duty at the gate of the Tree of Omniscience, Doflamingo walked into the large library carrying a kerosene lamp. The collection of books in the Tree of Omniscience is not only related to history, otherwise, it would not be worthy of the so-called omniscient name. Ohara is not only an archaeological holy site, but also a treasure of culture. The collection of books of the Tree of Omniscience ranges from astronomy to geography, and also includes various types in the middle, such as novels, biographies, philosophy, art. Even ancient books. There are some picture books. The reason why these books are precious is that many of them are unique copies unearthed from various ancient ruins by scholars of Ohara who traveled thousands of miles away. Similarly, not all the scholars of Ohara studied taboo historical texts together, and most of them can be said to have spent their entire lives restoring, rubbing, and re-engraving these precious solitary copies. Doflamingo doesn't have a clear goal either. If he wants to find exactly what books to look for, he just comes in and reads them around. First, he circled around on the first floor, and after having no interest, Doflamingo walked along the stairs and walked towards the upper floor of the Tree of Omniscience. When he got to the bookcase at the top of the Tree of Omniscience, he suddenly discovered that all the books here had been categorized as philosophy. Put the sparks and collisions of ideas on the top. I thought it would be books related to history, Doflamingo murmured softly. Then, he took out a book, In Action, from the bookcase. After flipping through 2 pages, Doflamingo's eyes were filled with surprise, because some thoughts in the book, Wu Wei, are very similar to the Taoism in his cognition. This book comes from the country of flowers in West Blue. It is said that many years ago, the country of flowers had a native religion called Tao. This book is to expound the relevant ideas. Just when Doflamingo was a little surprised, such a voice suddenly appeared beside him. Doflamingo's eyes were full of surprise. He is a master, and he appeared beside him, but he didn't feel anything at all. But listening to the voice and judging it with the current situation, it seems that this master has no intention of harming himself. In just a short moment, Doflamingo had stabilized his mind and emotions, and asked naturally, "Do you know this book well?" "See." The voice replied softly. Doflamingo also followed the trend and turned his head to look at the place where the voice came from. It was indeed not far away from him, but Doflamingo was sure that when he first arrived at the highest floor, there was absolutely no one around. This guy popped up without anyone noticing. Through the skylight, a smear of moonlight just shone next to the figure, coupled with the light in Doflamingo's hand. It seemed that he could vaguely see the appearance of that figure. Just for a moment, Doflamingo's eyes became even more surprised, and he said in amazement, "Dorag." At this time, Drago was still very young, about 30 years old, with black messy long hair hanging behind him, and there were no red lines on his face that were later jokingly called Garp Souls. "You recognize me?" Drago was slightly surprised, and then said, "Haven't asked for advice yet?" Donquixote Doflamingo. "Well, is he a North Blue villain?" Doflamingo quickly suppressed his surprise and introduced himself with a smile. Obviously, he knew Drago, and Drago didn't know him. Speaking of which, Drago is actually not well known nowadays. Although he is the son of the marine hero Garp, he has always kept a low profile. It belongs to the kind of situation. Those who should know his existence know it, and those who shouldn't know it don't know it. Hearing Doflamingo's self-introduction, Dorag is also a little strange. He thought for a while, then raised his brows and asked, "North Blue? The Donquixote family who started out as a smuggler?" "That's right." Doflamingo nodded. After pondering for a moment, Drago suddenly asked, "Are you the original celestial dragons?" "So, do you all know my identity as the former celestial dragons?" Doflamingo laughed at himself a little helplessly. Drago smiled and said, "Those who are qualified to know will know." After a short pause, Drago asked again, "Why did you appear here?" Although they only chatted for a few words, Doflamingo didn't sense from Drago's tone that he rejected such a vicious party as himself. And it seems that this guy is quite easy to talk to. Therefore, Doflamingo also relaxed a little, and tentatively teased, "What you mean is that a person like me cannot and should not appear here." Drago was stunned for a moment, and then said seriously, "I'm sorry, everyone is equal before knowledge, I was rude." Doflamingo didn't pursue anything, but said with a slightly emotional tone, "As for why I appear here, it's probably because I feel confused." "Confused?" Drago's eyes were a little dazed, and he said, "Why do you feel confused?" "I think. Maybe, this world is becoming more and more difficult for me to see through." Doflamingo thought for a while, and then said, "You know, I was originally a celestial dragon's, and I lived a self-proclaimed life on Marie Joy's. For God's life, I have whatever I want, and I take it for granted that this should be the life I have, and I have never thought about the more profound issues about this world." Dorag smiled and said, "With all due respect, most of the celestial dragons I know of are like this." "Fufurofurfur, that's right." Doflamingo replied with a smile. Then, he continued, "But in the 10 years since I left Marie Joy's, although I was young, I have experienced many things that ordinary people cannot experience and understand. Reflecting, until not long ago, I suddenly discovered that this world should not be like this." Drago's eyes lit up, and he asked, "Then what do you think this world should be like?" Doflamingo glanced at Drago like a fool, and then said, "If I know the answer, will I still feel confused?" In fact, Doflamingo is not confused about the world, nor is he the kind of person who insists on being true to the world. He also has little interest in philosophical and ideological questions about what the world should look like. In his opinion, what does the world look like? The answer to this question should be, the world is the way I like Doflamingo. The world that I do not like Doflamingo has no value or meaning to explore. For example, now, he is not the king of the world, he was kicked out of Marie Joy's, he doesn't like this kind of world, so he wants to turn this world upside down, and change this damn world into what he likes. And the reason why Doflamingo said these words at this time is mainly because, or a lot of loggers like this guy. At the same time, Drago shook his head helplessly and said, "Yes, if there is an answer, I won't feel confused." "So what about you? Why are you here?" Doflamingo asked naturally. "Like you, maybe you feel confused about this world, so you want to find some answers from the wisdom of your ancestors?" Drago said after thinking about it. After a slight pause, he smiled again and said, "Actually, I have been here for a long time. I have read many books on this floor. In my impression, in the original story, after Ohara was destroyed, Dorag brought flowers to mourn Dr. Clover and others, mourning Ohara. I think this friendship started from this time, right? Of course, it is also possible that Dr. Clover and Dorag have no real friendship, and the two were just so-called spiritual friends. So have you found the answer?" Doflamingo looked at Dorag and asked. At this time, Dorag is not the leader of the Songming army. In fact, he is now a member of the volunteer army. The so-called volunteer army is simply a civilian armed force. When pirates are rampant, Marine is sometimes overwhelmed, this kind of civilian armed force will be born naturally. If Doflamingo's childhood memory is not wrong, then earlier, Dorag should have served in the Marine for a while, But later, he did not know what happened, so he resolutely quit the marine and joined the Zeong military. After the era of the great pirates began, his ideas seemed to become more radical. After Ohara was destroyed, Dorag founded the Gemming Army, and gradually became the #1 enemy of the world government. Therefore, it can also be said that this self-volunteer army is the predecessor of the Gemming Army. Dorag smiled and waved his hands when he heard the words, "Of course not." He said this, and looked up at the skylight, following the bright moonlight. His gaze softened a lot, and then said softly, "During this period of time, I got some inspiration from this tree of omniscience, that is. The times are changing rapidly, and the world is also constantly changing. The wisdom of the predecessors and ancestors cannot give any answers. They are more like lights that illuminate the way forward for us. Follow these lights. To find, the real answer will always be in the sea." Forever in the sea means. Doflamingo raised his brows and said, "Do you want to say that true knowledge comes from practice?" True knowledge comes from practice. Dorag was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then clapped his hands and said, "That's right, that's what it means, but you have made its meaning more condensed. If you want to get any answer, you have to go to the sea to find it yourself." In fact, at the beginning, Durago didn't attach much importance to Doflamingo, but felt that the two were destined to meet each other in the Tree of Omniscience this evening, so they wanted to chat for a few words, that's all. But after a brief contact and conversation, Drago found that the former celestial dragons, the guy who called himself the North Blue villain, had a lot of inspiration in his mind that could bring him lights. In fact, it is true. You said that Doflamingo should build a spiritually civilized singing team from scratch. That is impossible, and he can't do it. But if you let him, in this kind of environment, use castles in the sky, brag in an unrealistic way, point out the country, talk about thoughts and so on, then I'm sorry, he can chat with you for a day. Doflamingo communicated with Dorag for more than 2 hours in this way, and he just talked about it. And Drago is also very excited, feeling that he has gained a lot. Seeing that the time was almost up, Doflamingo stopped talking, and then said, "It's getting late, it's almost time to go back to rest." "Where is this going?" "I haven't figured out what you said just now, that productivity determines the relationship of production," Drago said hastily. Cough. Doflamingo cleared his throat pretentiously, and then said, "Dorag, we are in the Tree of Omniscience, in the ocean of knowledge, so you should understand that knowledge is very precious." "Ah?" Drago froze for a moment, then frowned slightly and said, "So I need to pay?" Before Doflamingo could speak, Dorag said very grandly, "How much?" "I will support you with my father's salary." Doflamingo was stunned for a moment, and said in his heart that you are a very filial child, no wonder you can sit with me. But he still waved his hand and said, "Knowledge is priceless, so I think we can exchange with each other." "What do you want?" Drago asked. "I've been weak and sick since I was a child, and I always wanted to learn some physical skills to keep fit," Doflamingo said seriously. Doflamingo and Dorag met at the Tree of Omniscience for about 4 consecutive days, every day at night. It was as if two big men were having a tryst. It was all right at first, but after a long time, both of them seemed to be unbearable. During this period, Doflamingo talked nonsense and told Dorag a lot of messy thoughts and philosophies. Dorag also looks like he has benefited a lot. Of course, Doflamingo doesn't think that what he said will have a great impact on Dorag. Will be what kind of person? To Dorag, the words Doflamingo said, like the thoughts in these books, are nothing more than lights to illuminate the way forward. The real answer can only be known by walking this road by yourself. Also on the 4th day, Dorag handed over a notebook that he had sorted out in the past few days to Doflamingo. It's not the Dragon Claw Fist that Doflamingo expected. It is estimated that Duo Lage has not yet summarized this system of body skills to form a genre. But thinking about it, even if he has really done this, he will not easily teach Doflamingo this kind of bottom-of-the-box stuff. You said before that you only have some simple fighting skills, and you are not very good at physical skills. Dorag looked at Doflamingo, who was flipping through his notebook, and then said, "Based on this situation, I will give you a rough summary. Let's take a look at the basic physical training methods. It can't be regarded as a high-end product, but it is definitely a basic skill that has been honed over time. After laying a solid foundation, no matter what genre you want to follow, you can switch at any time, even. If you can calm down and polish carefully, maybe you can also walk out of your own route." Doflamingo flipped through it briefly, then looked at Drago and said, "Thank you very much." Although he still doesn't quite understand it, he feels that with Drago's character, he shouldn't be fooled. This kind of physical training method that can lay a solid foundation is just right for him. Vaguely, Doflamingo felt that this might be the basic essence of physical training in Marine's system. It's just an equivalent exchange. Drago didn't take the credit, and then said, "The knowledge about hockey is not part of our transaction. but for the sake of fate, I probably summed up some key points and put them in the last few pages. If you get a chance, you may wish to refer to it. Regarding hockey's practice knowledge, Dr. Clover said that he can give it to Doflamingo the day after tomorrow. At that time, you can also refer to this material of Drago for a better understanding. So after hearing Dorag's words, Doflamingo's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, "F you Furfur, I owe you a favor." Drago waved his hand and didn't answer. Instead, he glanced at the moonlight on the skylight, and then said, "My vacation is almost over, and I won't come again. If there is a chance, I will be on the sea at that time. Let's meet. Next time we meet, I'll buy you a drink," Doflamingo responded. At the same time as his words fell, the skylight above shook slightly, as if a gap was exposed, and then, the pages of the notebook in Doflamingo's hand seemed to be blown by a breeze, and several pages were turned over. When he came back to his senses, Drago, who was standing in front of him just now, had completely disappeared. "I'm afraid this guy's ability really has something to do with the wind," Doflamingo murmured softly. With some knowledge about strength growth in his hands, Doflamingo has no extra interest in this big library. He is going to go back to study tonight, then rest early, and start practicing tomorrow. After a period of time, Doflamingo really did not wander around on Ohara Island, and he and Virgo, in the back mountain of Ohara, practiced asceticism. While Doflamingo was penanced in West Blue, a storm was brewing on the sea. Naval Headquarters Marineford. Garp was wearing Marine's cloak of justice and Vice Admiral's epaulettes, holding a box of senbei in his hand, and was stuffing it into his mouth without any image. Beside him was a tall and thin figure, who was his younger brother, Kuzan, now. It is said that he is a follower, but Kuzan has a star on his shoulders. In Naval Headquarters, he is already considered a high-level member. Not long after the two walked from the military port of Marineford, they saw Chief Staff Officer Suru and his little follower Guion walking in front. Guion did not become Marine Admiral in the future, but she was Naval Headquarters Admiral Alternate, and her strength was also very strong. She was commensurate with Suru's big staff sisters and had a very close relationship. "Little Crane," Garp immediately shouted after seeing Chief Staff Officer Suru. Hearing the voice behind him, Chief Staff Officer Suru paused a little, but he didn't stop. He didn't even turn his head back. Instead he walked forward at a faster speed. But before she took a few steps, Garp had already strode up to catch up, shouting, "Xiaohei, I'm calling you, didn't you hear me?" Seeing that he could not get rid of Garp, Chief Staff Officer Suru slowed down a little, and then said, "I heard. I heard you are still walking so fast?" Garp complained, very displeased. "It's because I heard that's why I walked faster. If you know how to watch words and expressions, you should know that I'm avoiding you," Senior Staff Officer Suru said helplessly. "Why do you avoid me? Aren't we good friends?" Garp asked with a confused face. "Because every time I get involved with you, it means trouble is coming," Chief Staff Officer Suru said without hesitation. The two of them were bickering here, and Kuzan and Guion, who followed behind, couldn't help laughing. They all know very well, don't look at the appearance of General Staff Suru and Vice Admiral Garp, but in fact, their relationship is really very good, and they are comrades who can entrust their lives on the battlefield. Garp was so thick-skinned that he didn't care about Chief Staff Suru's words at all. After stuffing a handful of senbei in his mouth, he asked directly, "How is it? Has your intelligence department heard about Roger? 1 and 2 are looking for Roger. Is that guy so attractive?" Chief Staff Officer Suru rubbed his brow with a little helplessness and asked. "Who else is looking for Roger?" Garp asked curiously. "If you read the newspapers more, you will know that guy Shiki is asking for news about Roger all over the world. It is said that guy wants to join forces with Roger. If things really develop in this direction, then but it is very bad. In the past few years, our control over New World has become weaker and weaker. If the two of them join forces, they may not become the next rocks," Chief Staff Officer Suru said with a slightly heavy tone. On the contrary, after Garp heard this, he raised his hand and patted Chief Staff Officer Suru's shoulder and said, "Little Crane, don't worry about this kind of thing. That guy Shiki is just wishful thinking. Roger won't join forces with him." "How dare you be so sure?" Senior Staff Suru glanced at Garp. Garp rubbed his chin, wiped away the senbei residue from the corner of his mouth, and then smiled confidently. "It's the answer given to me by the fist. How many times do you think I have fought against Roger?" General Staff Suru was silent for a moment, then whispered softly, "I hope so." Garp didn't ask about Roger, but asked suddenly, "About Shiki and his flying pirate group. Do you have any plans for the intelligence staff? You can't really let this guy become the leader of the New World, the pirate overlord? The most difficult part of the plan against Shiki is that its mobility is too strong. Faced with this situation, our Marine's greatest advantage, that is, its strength, cannot be fully utilized, Chief Staff Officer Suru said. Shiki is very powerful, but there are not no pirates as powerful as him. Whitebeard, Roger, Red Earl and others are all first class and powerful. But unfortunately, Shiki's fruit ability is very strange, which makes Marine very blind. This guy is known as a pirate, but the whole thing is flying around in the sky, it's really annoying. Naval Headquarters Marineford. In Sengoku Admiral's office, a group of Marine's senior generals gathered here. But today's atmosphere is not so serious, it looks like it's just a gathering among colleagues. Garp sat on the sofa with a teacup in his hand, took a sip and asked, Sengoku, I heard that you went to hunt down the Whitebeard pirates and failed again? Sengoku was sitting at his desk at this moment, and when he heard Garp's words, he rolled his eyes and said, You have arrested Roger more than 40 times, and you haven't seen any success? Why are these two guys still showing off? Zephyr Admiral sat on the other side of the sofa and said a little funny. After a few people chatted for a while, Sengoku looked at Chief Staff Officer Suru and asked, Xiaohei, did you gain anything from going to North Blue this time? Speaking of North Blue, it is a bit special for Marine, because Marine has gained a lot from North Blue in recent years. For example, Sakazuki and Peluzolino, who are currently called the Three Monsters by many people in Marine, are all from North Blue. And Suru's chief staff member himself is also from North Blue. So during this period of time, do Marine executives think that North Blue is an outstanding person? Therefore, if there is nothing to do, I will go to North Blue for a stroll, looking for good seedlings. No, Chief Staff Officer Suru shook his head, but after hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but said, however, in the past 2 years, that Donquixote family seems to be very popular in North Blue. Donquixote Doflamingo, there is a faint feeling of becoming the leader of the dark world of North Blue. Donquixote Doflamingo. Zephyr frowned slightly, and then said, Didn't you say it was a smuggling gang from North Blue? It is true that smuggling is illegal, but the world is not black and white. In many cases, whether it is the government of the world or the Marine, they will need such a channel to help them complete some invisible people and invisible light. Therefore, people in Marine do not have much resistance to smuggling gangs. Speaking of it, in fact, the cards, strength, and influence of Doflamingo and even North Blue Donquixote family are not qualified to be discussed in the office of Sengoku, who is now a Marine Admiral. For these bigwigs with more than 1 million soldiers in their hands, Roger, Shiki, Whitebeard and other top bigwigs who can attract the world's noise with a little action are worthy of their attention and discussion object. But in fact, Doflamingo has a special status for these big guys in Marine. Don't get me wrong, this is not about his former Celestial Dragon's status. This status doesn't mean much to the Marine boss, at least judging from the current value of Doflamingo, it doesn't mean much. Compared with it, Doflamingo's status as the elder brother of Sengoku Admiral's adopted son is even more special. A few years ago, when Sengoku went to North Blue for a mission, he brought back a child, and that child was the former Celestial Dragon's Donquixote Rocinante. He is the younger brother of the young master of Donquixote family, the largest smuggling gang in North Blue. Before I went to North Blue, the kid from Rocinante came to me and said that he wanted me to pay more attention to his brother, so after I went to North Blue, I paid more attention, although on the surface, this North Blue the Donquixote family is still weak and not worthy of too much attention. But how should I put it? Chief Staff Officer Suru frowned slightly and said, through the operation of the Donquixote family, I can see Doflamingo's dazzling ambition. Rocinante, Doflamingo's younger brother, but speaking of it, it's been so many years, anyway, the current Doflamingo has never seen his brother once. Because when he came here, he was scolded on Marie Joy's, and when he returned to North Blue, his brother had disappeared and disappeared. It is estimated that he was frightened by the act of killing his father and ran away. Later, he met Sengoku again and was adopted. Today's Rocinante is a member of Marine. Logically speaking, he has the status of the adopted son of Marine Admiral. In Marine, it can be said that he is like a fish in water, but Rocinante is a very kind, even somewhat pedantic person. As the son of Admiral, he never took the initiative to talk about it with others, let alone used any privileges because of it. It can be said that among naval headquarters, except for those who are closely related to Sengoku, few people in Marine know the identity of Rocinante. Because of this, Rocinante himself intends to step up in the Marine step by step, relying on his own talents. However, it is a little regretful that compared with his brother Doflamingo, he seems to have limited talents, neither a born conqueror nor a gifted genius. Even now, he just joined the intelligence department and became a Marine intelligence analyst. As for Chief Staff Officer Suru, one of Marine's intelligence officers, he also knows Rocinante's identity, so he still takes care of Rocinante. Ambition. Sengoku murmured softly, and then asked, how? First of all, the guy Doflamingo is completely different from Rosinante. It can even be said that they are the two sides of the mirror. Rosinante is too kind and innocent, while Doflamingo is too dark and evil, Suru said. The rest of the people heard this and didn't think there was anything wrong with it. Although most of the people present didn't know about Doflamingo, how can I put it? At least they all knew that this kid cut off his father's head when he was 10 years old up. What a good guy this could be. Naturally bad, no surprise. That guy in North Blue deliberately maintained and even promoted his notoriety for some purpose. For this reason, he showed his extremely cruel side. 2 examples. The first example, when he was 14 years old that year, the Donquixote family completely destroyed the entire town when they accidentally tripped over the uneven road while walking on the road, causing more than 700 casualties. The second example, last year, was with Doflamingo, the former North Blue's largest smuggler, Rasta, who had been working with him for 5 years, was murdered by Doflamingo overnight with all 76 members of his family because he did not want to really join the Donquixote family, Suru said. These are all things she heard about the investigation from North Blue this time. Cruel and ruthless. This is the label he deliberately put on himself, and it can be seen from this that he is going to go further and further in this dark abyss. In fact, the development model of Donquixote family is also in this way. Apart from smuggling, the Donquixote family is also currently involved in the slave business, while selling various illegal contraband, and intends to try to get involved in the arms business. It can be predicted that with the gradual growth of Don Quixote Doflamingo, the illegality of the Donquixote family business is no longer limited to the so-called smuggling, Chief Staff Officer Suru said again. After a pause, Chief Staff Officer Suru added, the Donquixote family also has a complete set of promotion mechanisms. At the same time, they are searching for some talented children from all over the North Blue, and they will be trained in the Donquixote family since childhood. Reserved power. All of the above shows that Don Quixote Doflamingo does not intend to be limited to this in this life. He will go further and further on the path of evil and darkness. If there is any change in the future, he will become our marine. The enemy is not impossible. At this moment, Sengoku Admiral suddenly said, Xiaohei, is there a possibility? But just as he opened his mouth, he seemed to think of something, and there was a touch of softness in his eyes. He shook his head and said, forget it. However, as old comrades who have known each other for many years, Garp, Zephyr, Suru and others seem to have guessed what Sengoku wanted to say just now. Darkness is bound to exist, and this world is inseparable from darkness. Black and white are two phenomena that coexist and restrain each other, but they can never be mutually extinct. For a moment, Sengoku felt that instead of letting the dark world of North Blue grow wildly, it would be better for Marine to put a shackle on their heads. And Doflamingo, is it possible to become such a shackle? But in a blink of an eye, he remembered his adopted son. Such use was really a little inappropriate, so Sengoku didn't say much. In the final analysis, Doflamingo is not an important person to the Marine bosses, so after a short chat about Doflamingo, the topic switched to other places. Zephyr, does Marshal Kong agree to your resignation as Admiral? Garp asked suddenly. Kuzan, who was pouring tea at the side, froze for a moment, and said in surprise, Teacher, you want to step down as Admiral? What's going on? Zephyr put down the teacup in his hand, and said with a little sigh, isn't this old? Kuzan wanted to ask more questions, but Gion pulled him away, so he didn't ask any more. In fact, Zephyr proposed to resign from Admiral a long time ago, but he has been rejected by Marshal Kong, so far, he has not been able to resign. Things here are also a bit tortuous. Zephyr is a very powerful guy. He is talented, and upright. He joined Marine at the same time as Sengoku, Garp, Suru and others, but his performance is far superior to that of the same period. At the age of 38, Zephyr became the Admiral of Naval Headquarters by virtue of his powerful hockey and physical strength. It can be said that he is the youngest Admiral in Marine in the past 100 years. When he was Admiral, Sengoku hadn't even been Admiral yet. When you have great strength, it is easy to kill a person. Anyone with strength can do it, but Zephyr has great strength and has never killed a single pirate from the beginning to the end. It can be seen how perfect his control of his own power is. It is also because of this that he got the title of Don't Kill Admiral. However, this kind of mercy was not appreciated by the evil pirates. Zephyr became an admiral at the age of 38, got married in the same year, and gave birth to a child the next year. This happy life didn't last long. At the age of 42, Zephyr's family was killed by the pirates. He had spared his life. Since then, Zephyr's temperament has changed drastically, and he has become extremely hated towards pirates. But it was also this year that Zephyr, whose family was ruined, was disheartened. For the first time, he proposed to resign, but was persuaded to stay. For a long time after that, although Zephyr still held the rank of admiral, he no longer performed the functions of admiral. He shifted his interests and hobbies to the matter of cultivating the new generation of Marines. With the efforts of Zephyr, Marine established the officer training camp. Sakazuki, Paluzolino, Kuzan, etc., and even many generals and officers of Marine in the later period basically came out of the teacher Zephyr. After sighing for a while, Zephyr shook his head and said, "No, the Marshal still disagrees." Peeved ha 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 ha. "Let me just say, Admiral is not that easy to be. Can't you go up and down now?" Garp said with a big laugh. Hearing this, Zephyr said angrily, "It's not you bastard, if you agreed to be Admiral, I wouldn't be stuck here now." Marine's Admiral generally has 3 positions, collectively referred to as the 3 Admirals, and known as the highest combat power. This is a common practice, but in this generation of Marine, Admiral has always been vacant, and that is because Garp is not willing to do Admiral. As a Marine hero, if Garp doesn't become an Admiral, the Marine generals who are less experienced and stronger than him are naturally embarrassed to sit on the top. Therefore, only those bigwigs like Sengoku and Zephyr whose reputation, status, and strength can be regarded as equal to Garp in Marine can sit firmly in the position of Marine Admiral. This situation lasted until Sengoku became the Marshal of Marine, so the old generation of Marine Admirals were all replaced. Sakazuki, Paluzolino, Kuzan and other top players who were overwhelmed by one side, ascended to the throne of the 3 Admirals. Now that Marine Admiral is missing a position, how could Kong, the Marine Admiral, just let Zephyr go? "If you want to be free, you can't stand too high." Garp waved his hand and said very calmly. Now that Zephyr is in a situation where he can't get down, to some extent, it can be regarded as fulfilling Garp's words. After chatting for a while, Chief Staff Officer Suru said, "Okay, I won't gossip with you guys here, I have to go back to the intelligence department to sort out some information." As soon as she finished speaking, she got up and took Gion with her, preparing to leave Sengoku's office. At the same time, Sengoku's expression hesitated for a moment, and then he said, "Cough. Xiaohei, what, let's go together, I will stop by to see Rosinante, this kid hasn't come home for 2 or 3 days." After Sengoku and Suru left the Admiral office together, Kuzan said with emotion, "Mr. Sengoku really attaches great importance to Rosinante." But as soon as he finished speaking, Garp and Zephyr looked at him with strange eyes. Kuzan froze for a moment, scratched his head and said, "What's wrong? Did I say something wrong? Does he value Rosinante? He obviously wants to spend more time with Xiaohei." Zephyr teased with a smile. "Ni Yuan." Garp murmured with a little emotion. Zephyr, Sengoku, Garp, and Suru joined Marine at the same time, and the 4 of them have been outstanding since then, so they are often arranged for combat operations together, and naturally they have a very deep relationship. As the only woman among the 4, Suru is naturally taken care of more. Of course, for Garp and Zephyr, this is pure friendship. The same is true of later developments. Garp and Zephyr both started their own families. Only Sengoku, his feelings for General Staff Suru, probably changed in nature, not the kind of simple friendship. But how to put it, when he was young, Sengoku was not good at expressing his feelings, and he was very professional, so he never expressed his thoughts. As a result, General Staff Suru developed a relationship with another elite in Marine, got married and had children. At this point in the matter itself, although Sengoku felt a little regretful, he didn't say what he was going to do. He could only bury this feeling deep in his heart. But fate made another joke for them. Marine is a very high-risk occupation. It is the same from admiral to ordinary sailors. On the battlefield, the sword has no eyes. Suru's chief staff officer's husband, Marine Vice Admiral, died in battle. This is also a few years ago, so now, this guy Sengoku has Sao Wei GG. However, judging from the later situation, it is estimated that he failed to become a real hero. Sengoku followed Suru all the way to Marine's intelligence department, and also saw his adopted son Rosinante who was handling some clerical work. "Admiral. Great staff." Rosinante greeted Sengoku and Suru quickly after seeing Sengoku and Suru. Of course, in such public occasions, he always referred to Sengoku as Admiral, not Father. "Rosinante, you haven't been home for the past few days," Sengoku said kindly to Rosinante. In his early years, he had an unrequited love for Chief Staff Officer Suru, but later he failed, and naturally he did not get married and have children, so he treats Rosinante as his adopted son. Although Rosinante is not very good in terms of physical ability, it does not mean that people are not good enough if they are not strong enough. Judging whether a person is good or not is not just based on strength. Rosinante has done a very good job in intelligence observation and summarization. In the intelligence department, he is loved and cared for by his colleagues. This is a talent in itself. What Sengoku is more pleased and fond of is the kind of truth, kindness and beauty he feels from Rosinante. Rosinante is a very kind child. His heart is full of light, justice, and benevolence. The work these days is really busy. Rosinante responded, and then said, our third intelligence analysis team has carried out a lot of tracking and summarizing the information of the current New World flying pirates. Sengoku nodded, then asked naturally, did you find anything? In fact, he just asked casually, and didn't expect to find anything. But after he finished speaking, he saw Rosinante hesitate for a moment, then nodded seriously. Yes, according to the analysis of our third intelligence analysis team, the flying pirates led by Golden Lion Shiki were originally dispersed. It seems that the main fleet of the New World is gathering towards a certain destination from various sea areas in the New World, and according to our combined judgment of the routes of all parties, that place is. Where is it? Sengoku asked in a deep voice. Edd War. Rosinante responded. In the next few days, Marine's intelligence department was very busy. Shiki is currently the most powerful admiral of the pirate group in New World. Coupled with his own strength and influence, his every move can be said to affect the context of the world. For an overlord like him, the pirates under his command are all suddenly converging towards the Edd War sea area. There must be something wrong. In the Marshal's office, Sengoku and other Marine senior generals gathered here. Marshal Kong looked at the document in his hand, and after thinking for a while, he looked up at the people sitting below and said, in other words, there is no change in the Whitebeard pirates? No. The latest sighting information on the Whitebeard pirates Moby Dick shows that they appeared on the Fishmen Island half a month ago. The Fishmen Island is far away from the Edd War sea area, so it is unlikely. Big, and our intelligence department analyzes that Whitebeard himself and the main force are probably not in New World. A rear admiral of the intelligence department quickly replied. The Whitebeard pirates do have a fixed site, but Edward Newgate prefers to live on his flagship, Moby Dick. And Newgate is also a guy who can't be idle. He will not be in a certain place for a long time. Stationed in a sea area, most of the time, wandering around. Maybe he was in New World last month, and next month he's crossing the Calm Belt to South Blue. It can be said that it is a big pirate who can do whatever he wants. Naval Headquarters also has a detailed analysis of the Whitebeard pirates and independent intelligence filings. Over the years, the Marine Intelligence Department has agreed that the Whitebeard pirates do not seem to have the ambition to become a maritime hegemon. Of course, this is only one aspect. When the strength of the Whitebeard pirates expands to a certain extent, when the strength of Whitebeard is so strong that no one can control it, even if they have no ambition to be such an overlord, they have already become the overlord themselves. Therefore, Naval Headquarters is always monitoring the Whitebeard pirates. Isn't it Whitebeard? Marshal Kong stroked his beard and murmured softly. At present, judging from the situation in New World, Shiki is first-class powerful both in terms of personal strength and the forces under his command. And Shiki is also ambitious. He wants to become the overlord of the pirates and take over the whole world. In terms of reputation and strength, there are still some pirates who can rival him, such as Gold Roger, Whitebeard, Red Earl, etc., can be compared with Shiki. But in terms of power, the only one who can really threaten Shiki is Whitebeard. Roger is working alone. Judging from his behavior, it doesn't seem like he wants to fight for world hegemony. The threat to Shiki is not high. And Red Earl Beloric Redfield was even more extreme. He did it alone. Although strong, he might not be as threatening as Roger. Later, the facts also proved that if Shiki hadn't been so desperate and insisted on provoking Roger, the child of destiny, then there would be a high probability that Shiki would still be his pirate overlord in New World, and Roger's pirate group would still be disbanded. From a practical point of view, Roger is really no threat to Shiki. It is also because of these reasons that when Shiki started to summon the fleet, Naval Headquarters immediately felt that Shiki finally couldn't bear Whitebeard, and was going to war with Whitebeard. But after a few days of intelligence analysis, it seems that this is not the case. Could it be Roger? After all, Xiaohei said before, isn't Shiki looking for Roger? Garp asked suddenly. It's very difficult to obtain information about the Roger pirates. After all, they are too small. Moreover, Shiki has not been looking for Roger once or twice. Vice Admiral, a Marine, said after thinking for a while. Indeed, it wasn't once or twice that Shiki approached Roger, and it wasn't that they had never fought before, but this was the first time that the main fleet had been assembled like this. Is there any result of the intelligence tracking of the Roger pirates? Marshal Kong looked at the Vice Admiral of the Intelligence Department and asked. The Vice Admiral quickly said, at present, the Chief Staff is collecting information about Roger, tomorrow at the latest. The Whitebeard pirate group is large, so it is easier to find it. The Roger pirate group is small and the information is more complicated, so Chief Staff Suru is handling it himself. Before the vice admiral could finish his sentence, the door of the marshal's office was suddenly opened, and then Chief Staff Officer Suru walked in with a serious face, and said, "The Roger pirates appeared in the Valena Island, where they conducted a brief supply, and Valena Island is not very far from the Edd War Sea. Major Admiral, with all due respect, even if this is the case, it's too far-fetched, right? We can't just think that Shiki is going for Roger just because Roger's pirates have appeared near here." Another Marine Vice Admiral, after hesitating for a moment, he retorted. Chief Staff Officer Suru nodded, and then said, "That's right, but we learned from a piece of secret information that the Roger pirates seem to want to get something from the Big Mom pirates, and they went from Varana Island to Cake Island. If so, crossing the Edd War Sea is the closest route." Then, without waiting for the others to speak, Chief Staff Officer Suru said, "According to the current situation, the possibility that Shiki's target is the Roger pirates this time is already the greatest, and no matter who his target is, in fact, it doesn't prevent us from focusing on the Edd War Sea area, does it? I think it's time for us to act." Xiaohei is right. Sengoku Admiral immediately stood up and said in a deep voice, "No matter what Shiki's goal is, the situation in the Admiral Sea area has been determined. No matter what his goal is, we have to go just have a look." The Chief Staff Officer and Admiral both said so, and the rest of the generals no longer have any objections. After Marshal Kong thought for a while, he looked at the crowd. This guy Garp seemed to be excited. He put down the senbei in his hand, and straightened his back pretendingly, as if you didn't choose me, who else could you choose? After all, I'm a professional against Roger. However, in the next second, Marshal Kong's gaze skipped over Garp, and finally landed on Sengoku and said, "Sengoku, you should go to this matter yourself." Understood. Sengoku immediately pushed the frame on the bridge of his nose, and agreed in a deep voice. "What about me?" Garp stood up suddenly and asked, very dissatisfied. Marshal Kong ignored Garp at all, and continued, "Sengoku, you are responsible for dispatching enough combat power to deal with this incident, and the rest of you will put aside the unimportant things first, and give priority to deploying Edd War's forces. Alright, disband, go to your own business." Garp stays. The rest of the people seemed to be no stranger to this situation, and they disbanded without saying a word. When everyone was almost gone, Marshal Kong looked at Garp and said, "Garp, according to the system, our Marine has its own set of plans to deal with various crises and emergencies. You know that, right?" "Clear." Garp nodded and said, but he didn't understand. Why did he mention this all of a sudden? "Then according to the plan, if there is a crisis caused by pirates with a threat level like Shiki, Naval Headquarters should immediately send Admiral to deal with the incident. Am I right?" Marshal Kong asked again. Garp froze for a moment, seemed to understand what Marshal Kong was going to say, so he could only bite the bullet and say, "That's right. So I handed over this matter to Sengoku, is it reasonable?" Marshal Kong asked again. "Yes." Garp replied helplessly. "Then, if you want to enjoy this kind of treatment, take responsibility for me, Admiral of our Naval Headquarters, for many years," Marshal Kong said again. Okay. After talking so much, I'm going back to this kind of thing again. If there's nothing else, I'll go first." Garp turned around when he heard Marshal Kong talking about this again, and was about to pull the door to leave. Seeing Garp's reckless appearance, Marshal Kong also said angrily, "Hey, Garp, can you show some respect to me, you bastard? I haven't even finished talking yet." Garp stepped out of the Marshal's office, and said very coolly, "Although you haven't finished speaking, I have already listened." As soon as the voice fell, he slammed the door to death. Kuzan, who was waiting outside, looked at this scene, approached with a smile and said, "Mr. Garp, you rejected the Admiral appointment from the Marshal again?" West Blue, the back mountain of Ohara. At this time, in this remote back mountain, from time to time, a few wild beasts ran out of the forest in panic. If you look closer, you can still see that there are occasional turbulent air bursts from the forest. It seems that someone is fighting in the mountains and forests. In fact, it does. In the forest, Doflamingo's figure flipped a few times in the air, landed and stood on a boulder. However, in the next second, a figure with arms wrapped around armament hockey suddenly appeared in front of the boulder as if he had expected Doflamingo's foothold, and punched Doflamingo fiercely. "It's Virgo." Doflamingo did not dodge, but raised one foot very quickly, condescendingly, facing Virgo's fist, and directly stepped on it. Immediately afterwards, armament hockey's hedging broke out in an instant, and the boulder under Doflamingo's feet trembled and shook, with faint cracks emerging. However, the two did not stand still for too long, it was only a breath or two. Virgo, who was blocked by the punch, retracted his waist, retracted the punch fist instantly, and quickly took half a step forward, then let out a low shout, shoulder and elbow, and directly hit the stone where Doflamingo was with his arm. The boulder, which was already somewhat shattered in an instant, blasting out a cloud of smoke and dust. And the moment the smoke and dust spread, Virgo's strong figure had already rushed into it. Then, crackling sounds of collisions and fights, accompanied by strong air currents, continuously surged out of the smoke and dust. Virgo punched very fast. After entangled with Doflamingo's figure from the smoke, he no longer gave Doflamingo a chance to pull. One punch was more urgent than one punch. It only took 3 or 5 breaths. His fist shadow was in the smoke, like a machine gun, bang 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 towards Doflamingo. This wave of Doflamingo mainly focuses on a defensive counterattack, turning fists into palms. The pupils under the sunglasses are shaking back and forth, and the knowledgeable Haki is also running at high speed. With extremely accurate judgment, Virgo's fist shadow like a storm is personalized one by one. Untie it. Although Master Ma has made himself a joke, there is still some truth to what he said about extending hair extensions. Fighting against others, if the strength is not much different, it is actually a routine of receiving hair. If you don't get the upper hand, you'll take the move first, then resolve it, and finally counterattack with power, which is reasonable. The stormy punch came extremely fast, but it was difficult to maintain it for a long time. After more than 10 seconds, the muscles of Virgo's arms were already a little burdened, and because of this, his punching speed slowed down a little. But this little bit is enough to be regarded as a flaw. A gleam of light flashed in Doflamingo's eyes. At this moment, his observation Haki seemed to see all the shadows of fists overwhelming in front of him clearly. Virgo's movements seemed to be in slow motion. In the next second, Doflamingo's hands precisely grasped Virgo's 2 wrists from the shadow of fists all over the sky, choking the attack. At this time, Virgo's old strength has gone and new strength has not yet developed, and his arms were slightly sluggish due to the explosion just now. He struggled a bit, but he couldn't break free from Doflamingo's imprisonment. Looking at Virgo's slightly surprised eyes, Doflamingo actually wanted to pretend to say, "There is nothing invincible in martial arts in the world, only speed can't break it." But he was afraid that Virgo would step on his toes, so forget it. It was too late, but it was too late. Doflamingo grabbed Virgo's arms and raised his left leg. Then, he pulled his hands hard, pulling Virgo towards him, hitting the top of his knee, hitting towards Virgo's abdomen. Although Virgo was surprised for a short moment, his reaction speed was still extremely fast. While being pulled forward and forced to approach half a step, he also suddenly lifted one of his legs, covered Armament Haki, and was directly stuck in front of him. In the next moment, Armament Haki's hedging erupted again, and a surging air current rolled up between the two of them and rushed towards the surroundings. Dark lightning crackled around the two, and under the stalemate of Haki's strength, cracks were vaguely blasted in the air. But after all, it was Doflamingo's first strike this time, and Virgo's hasty response could only be a stalemate for a while. There was a muffled sound of collision in the air, and Virgo's figure was instantly blown away like a shell, plowing a deep trench more than 10 meters long on the ground. Also relying on the resistance of the ground, Virgo quickly stabilized his figure. The next moment, his vision dimmed, and when he raised his head again, the figure of Doflamingo was enveloped by Vice Admiral in the air. Doflamingo's body is extremely flexible. At this moment, his legs are split and stretched to the limit, and he is attacking Virgo with a tomahawk slash. Virgo's observation Haki is also going all out. Almost the moment he sees Doflamingo, he has already calculated the trajectory of this move clearly. It's still too late, and I can still avoid it. So Virgo put his hands on the ground and wanted to use his strength to jump out. But in the next second, his pupils suddenly showed a look of astonishment, because he felt an invisible force bombarding himself. This power is familiar to him, it is Armament Haki. But it shouldn't be. Obviously there is still a distance. Before Virgo could figure it out, the swift and violent impact directly knocked him to the ground. The violent impact smashed the ground, and then the smoke and dust from the explosion swept out. After more than 10 breaths, the smoke gradually dispersed, and the tall figure of Doflamingo was standing in front of the pit where Virgo was. He raised his hand, plucked the pink flamingo feather coat on his shoulder very casually, dusted off some dust on the feather, and then said with a smile, "Foo foo foo foo, Virgo, look this time, I took the first step." In the pit, Virgo struggled to sit up from the crack. At this time, the clothes on his shoulders burst, and the exposed skin was bruised and black, and there was some bloody foam in his breath. It looked like a serious injury, but it didn't seem to be very serious. This is basically normal. He and Doflamingo practiced together since they were young, and the two have exchanged ideas countless times. This happens often, either Doflamingo internal bleeding or Virgo fractures. The main thing is an actual combat. The second phase of Armament Haki. Emission? Virgo asked in a slightly excited tone. Although he was defeated, he didn't feel sad. On the contrary, he was very happy that Doflamingo's strength had increased. That's right. Doflamingo nodded, and then said, 2 days ago, I had a vague feeling that I was about to master this skill, but I always felt like I couldn't get out. After a slight pause, he pushed the frame on the bridge of his nose, and said with a smile on the corner of his mouth, but just now, when I struck this blow from the air, there was a kind of natural. A feeling appeared in my heart, I follow this feeling, and really played this flowing hockey. Sure enough. Although you always say that you have no talent in these areas, in fact, you are simply very talented, Virgo said with a smile. No, I'm still far behind the real monsters. Doflamingo shook his head without hesitation. Perhaps compared with a young genius like Virgo, Doflamingo is stronger, but what if we look at the sea? There are many monsters running rampant in this blue sea. Like Kaido, like Charlotte Linlin, who isn't a real talent. Either he is immortal, or he is born with divine power. Among these people, Doflamingo is really far behind. Looking at the future, the guy in the straw hat, who has been out at sea for 2.5 years, has almost swept across the sea. The veteran powerhouses who have been domineering for decades, it is simply outrageous to open the door for outrageous home. Virgo had never seen those so-called monsters, so he only thought that Doflamingo was self-effacing, and didn't bother about anything, and asked excitedly, Dover, how is your observation hockey? Do you feel a new level? Speaking of this, Doflamingo shook his head regretfully and said, no, compared to armament hockey, I have no clue about the advancement of observation hockey. I have been staying in Ohara for half a year. A few days ago, Dr. Clover also said that Albia had contacted him and was about to return. The legendary devil fruit was also found, which made Doflamingo very pleased. In the past 6 months, Doflamingo has basically been doing penance in Ohara. Constantly polishing his basic physical skills, and at the same time trying to push forward hockey's power. He still has the basics. He has practiced hockey for 7 years. Whether it is armament hockey or observation hockey, his background is very solid and good. Therefore, after acquiring advanced knowledge about hockey, in just half a year, armament hockey can be flowed to form the so-called emission, and enter a new realm. For Doflamingo, it is not an incredible thing, it should be said that it is normal as it should be. But observation hockey is very cheating. Doflamingo's observation hockey is actually very powerful in practice, with a large coverage. However, as for the advancement of observation hockey, the feeling of wanting to seek, foreseeing the future, has always been elusive to Doflamingo. Actually, from the relevant knowledge about observation hockey from Dr. Clover, it is different from armament hockey's advancement. Although the names are different in different places, Wano-kuni is called emission, and the Kingdom of Flowers is called Anjin, but they are all the same in essence, and there is only one route, which is to let the originally hardened and rigid armament hockey flow. Achieving this effect means that you have succeeded. But knowledge color is different. There are several situations, or directions, for hockey advancement of knowledge color. Some people are gifted in certain aspects, or have acquired enhancements, so his observation hockey will also focus on it, such as Red Earl Beloric Redfield. This guy's observation hockey can listen to people's hearts. This is the unique talent of the Red Earl, and in the original story, Enel of Sky Island can also hear people's hearts after receiving the blessing of Thunderfruit. This direction is different from foreseeing the future, but it is also classified as advancement of observation hockey. In addition, there is another kind, which is a very exaggerated field of knowledge and knowledge, the kind that easily covers an entire island and an entire sea area. That's right, when the coverage of knowledge and knowledge exceeds a certain range, it is also considered to be advanced. For example, the red-haired Shanks, who is still separated from Wano-kuni by a sea, can use his knowledge to sweep out the Admiral of Headquarters. Of course, he is even more perverted by Conqueror's hockey. After sweeping people out with knowledge and knowledge, he directly suppressed them with Conquerors after a distance of 100,000 miles. It can be said that his Conquerors is the strongest level. The same is true for the blind Fujitora with a smile. This guy can easily use observation hockey to sense the meteorite outside the atmosphere, lock it precisely, and then directly use his ability to pull the meteorite down. Coupled with being blind, he can still become a top expert, which shows how terrifying his observation hockey is. At the same time, observation hockey also has a very broad feature, that is, it has strong interoperability. Except for the listening to people's hearts, like the Red Earl, which requires talent, the advancement of knowledge and knowledge in the super-large field and the advancement of foreseeing the future can be said to be interlinked. Observation hockey often has such a large-scale range, and it also has the ability to see the future. However, it is a little embarrassing that people who have mastered the power of foreseeing the future, by virtue of their talents, may not necessarily have the coverage of observation hockey at the pervert level. From the current point of view, Doflamingo is completely confused about the matter of foreseeing the future, and can't find any good direction. According to this knowledge, this is indeed a special talent. It is estimated that Doflamingo is in terms of talent, it's not very conspicuous. However, his observation hockey is not unchanged, that is, after mastering some new knowledge points, Doflamingo has obviously broken the limit of his own accumulation of observation hockey. His observation hockey coverage is slowly growing. No longer be stuck by the previous bottleneck. So Doflamingo changed his mind. Since I can't foresee the future now, I should first expand my observation hockey. I don't know how far the Commodore has reached. Is it natural to master this power? At the same time, Doflamingo also has expectations for his devil fruit. Although it is the ability of the Phantom Beast, there is no doubt that his ability was born out of Bat Fruit. The Bat Fruit series basically has a basic ability, that is, ultrasonic echolocation. This is the same as Thunderfruit enhanced Enel's talent on observation hockey. Doflamingo thinks that this ability should also have a great possibility to enhance his talent in knowledge. Maybe it can bring him something. What about the surprise? After the sparring, Doflamingo pulled Virgo up, and the two sat under the tree to rest. I pulled back in the end, so I didn't hurt any bones, right? Doflamingo asked. Virgo moved his shoulders, then shook his head and said, no, it's just a little concussion, and it will recover in 2 or 3 days. Doflamingo nodded, and then said, speaking of which, I always feel that this armament hockey seems to have some more mysterious blind spot. Really? Virgo was stunned for a moment, and then said, why don't I feel this way? Maybe it's because. Doflamingo smiled and joked, because you don't have enough vision? Compared with Virgo, Doflamingo is more aware of the expressiveness of those hockey masters, which is far from being explained by flowing. In this, I am afraid that it is not only the reason for the Conqueror's hockey entanglement, but now Doflamingo has no way to touch these blind spots. Presumably, this is also information that Dr. Clover has no access to. Teacher Kaido's phrase, only hockey is above everything, is not that simple when you think about it. While Doflamingo was chatting with Virgo about these matters of practice, a young man with a prickly hair came running over from a distance in a hurry, holding a newspaper in his hand. My lord, after seeing Doflamingo, the hedgehog-haired boy hurriedly called out twice. Doflamingo followed the voice, and then said with a gentle smile, Gladius, I've told you many times, don't make such a fuss and panic. After hearing Doflamingo's words, Gladius quickly stopped his running steps and nervous expression. Gladius, a member of the Donquixote family, is only 10 years old this year, and he is still a kid. The Donquixote family has a complete training system, which includes searching for some potential orphans from all over North Blue and training them. This is the case for Gladius, and when he was discovered and adopted by the Donquixote family, he was already a demon fruit power, and his ability was the explosive fruit of Paramecia. Any devil fruit ability has more or less side effects. The side effect of this explosive fruit is that when Gladius's emotions fluctuate greatly, he is likely to explode himself. So Doflamingo taught him early on not to make a fuss when things happen, but to calm down. And Gladius also worships Doflamingo very much, and will never allow anyone to disobey Doflamingo. In fact, this is also a common situation in the Donquixote family. Many cadres are like this, and will never allow anyone to disobey Doflamingo. Sorry, my lord, Gladius said after calming down his emotions. Doflamingo smiled and said, F you Furfur, just pay more attention. Okay, tell me now, what happened to make you panic? My lord, a big event, a super big event, the pirate overlord of New World, the main fleet of the flying pirates led by Golden Lion Shiki, had a fierce battle with the Roger pirates in the Edd War sea area, during which the sea area suddenly a big storm blew up. Shiki's fleet was almost wiped out, and his whereabouts are also missing. The air pirates seem to be finished. Gladius hurriedly held up the newspaper and said. After Doflamingo heard the news, there was a touch of surprise in his eyes, but soon, he murmured softly, Edd War naval battle. The beginning of the fall of a generation of overlords. The pirate boss of the New World, Golden Lion Shiki, who is most expected to become the new generation of pirate overlord, ruined his future and ambition in a storm that he was caught off guard. From Marine's point of view, the memorabilia this time made them a little confused. As early as when Shiki's large fleet began to gather towards the Edd War Sea, Marine discovered this situation. Not long after that, Naval Headquarters dispatched Sengoku Admiral to the Edd War Sea to take full charge of handling the situation. In fact, not only Sengoku, but also Marine Hero Garp, Chief Staff Officer Suru and others participated in this operation. At that time, Marine's planned arrival time in the Edd War Sea was about 3 days later than Shiki's action. This is also a very reasonable arrangement. On the one hand, Marine itself is marching in a hurry. it is very stressful to go directly from Marineford in the first half of the Grand Line to Edd War in New World. Secondly, it's useless to go too early. If you go too early, won't you be taking advantage of Roger's top bag? Marine hoped that Shiki and Roger would fight, and it would be best if both sides were injured, and then Marine would finally find a suitable opportunity to enter the field and catch both of these scourges. So they must not be able to run in front of Roger. Otherwise, Shiki will set up a formation in the Edd War Sea area and make sufficient preparations. In the end, Sengoku Admiral rushes in with the Marine fleet. Can the scene be good? The 3-day period was the conclusion reached after Garp, Suru and others unanimously negotiated. It's been a long time, and I'm afraid that Roger won't be able to hold on. After all, there are not many Roger pirates, but Shiki has pulled all his main forces over, and the gap in strength is still obvious. But the time was short, and I was afraid that they would not have reached a very intense and stalemate, and Marine's appearance would cause some unnecessary changes. 3 days, almost just right. The two sides should have started a real fight, and the battlefield should have become chaotic, and it won't be able to stop just by saying stop. It can be said that Marine's plan was very good, but in the end the result was very muddled. 3 days. 3 days is too much. I don't know if Roger invited some mages, put Shiki's head down, cursed something like that. In short, the Edd War naval battle is very funny. Shiki just blocked the Oro Jackson of the Roger pirates and surrounded it on the sea. Then he put out a few harsh words and invited Roger to join forces with him. With the secrets that Roger mastered in the force that Shiki mastered, he could dominate the world, just around the corner. In fact, don't even mention it, there is no problem with Shiki's thinking in this set of operations. Roger has been very arrogant in the past few years, looking for historical texts all over the world. For the big shots, this is not a secret thing, especially Roger asked Whitebeard for this, and lent Whitebeard's brother-in-law. The historical text has been translated, and many people know it. Roger wanted to find the legendary final island, Raftel, through the text of the history, and by the way, take a look at the blank 100-year history, to satisfy his curiosity. The rest of the ideas may be miscellaneous, but they are not many, and the resurrection of ancient weapon is definitely not included among them. But even though he has such integrity, he doesn't intend to do anything like ancient weapon. But careerists like Shiki don't think so. If you have finished the historical text, then you must know the situation of the 3 ancient weapons. You can use this legendary power to destroy the world at any time. Does this still make others sit still? So Shiki was moved. Shiki admired Roger very much. This probably started from the battle in the Canyon of Gods. Roger and Garp defeated the Rocks pirate where Shiki was located. The performance is also very dazzling. After so many years, Shiki regards Roger as his favorite. As the saying goes, when Roger misses his life, this is the situation. Kazuki Oden met Roger, and he was tossing himself. Shiki met Roger, and the road to the Overlord directly shattered dreams. The white-haired man sent the black-haired man, and Whitebeard met Roger. For his son, he forcibly smashed himself and the Whitebeard pirates at Naval Headquarters Marineford. In short, Shiki admires Roger very much, and wants to join forces with Roger to get the ancient weapon out at that time. Coupled with the pirate power accumulated by his flying pirates, is he still worried about hegemony? At the same time, Shiki also regarded Roger as a threat, and he also considered in his heart that with the information Roger now has, he may become his strongest opponent at any time, so if Roger does not agree to join forces with him, then this guy has not yet before you get the ancient weapon out, kill him first. This is Shiki's ambition to be a hero. Everything was planned perfectly, at least until the harsh words were over. Roger rejected Shiki's invitation with righteous words, and then Shiki said harshly that he would kill Roger's pirates here in Edd War. Then, within 5 minutes after the words fell, the two sides just fired a few shots at each other, and even before hand-to-hand combat, a super large storm directly blew up in the Edd War Sea area. As I said before, any devil fruit has more or less side effects. For example, Kuzan's ability brought him extremely terrifying ice, and at the same time made his body temperature very low. When his body temperature dropped, he would feel sleepy and lazy. Like Sakazuki's magma, which makes him very hot. And, sand fruit is afraid of water, thunder fruit is afraid of rubber, these are side effects and defects. The same is true for Shiki's lion fruit. Once encountering extreme weather like a storm, this guy is like a plastic bag blown into the sky by a strong wind. 100% combat power, half of it can be used as not bad. It is also because of this that Shiki's large fleet, including himself, was destroyed by the storm without even pulling out a single hair of Roger. When the news spread to the rear, Sengoku and others were dumbfounded when they heard this situation. Then rushed to Edd War, only to see some shipwrecks on the sea. Shiki's life and death are unknown, and the Roger pirates have already slipped away. The original goal of arresting Shiki and Roger was not accomplished. But in general, Marine is not at a loss. After all, although no powerful characters have been caught, Shiki's large fleet has been destroyed here. It is a sure thing, and the strength of the pirates has been greatly weakened. However, from a higher level perspective, what is about to happen next may be enough for Marine to drink a pot. There is no doubt that Shiki is currently suppressing almost the entire New World careerists, such as Kaido, Charlotte Linlin, Silver Axe, John, Ochaku, the Evil King and other big pirates are all suppressed by this guy. With Shiki around, it's hard for them to develop. But now, a big storm has wiped out Shiki's large fleet in Edwall, and Shiki himself is now missing. For these New World careerists, there is no doubt that the mountain that weighed on their heads is gone. What will happen next is completely predictable. That is, New World will set off a new round of pirate hegemony. At the same time, the intensity and aftermath of this battle to determine a new round of overlords will definitely radiate to the entire world. Therefore, Marine has to face such challenges and threats. It's not just that Marine has considered this kind of problem. In fact, the newspaper Doflamingo read at this time also has a certain analysis of the future. Many commentators, analysts, and intelligence experts believe that a surging wave of the new era seems to be sweeping towards the world. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo put away the newspaper in his hand and laughed evilly. My lord, are you so happy because this is a good thing for us? Gladius asked. With an evil smile on the corner of Doflamingo's mouth, he nodded and said, of course, the more chaotic the world is, the more darkness spreads, and we, the evil party living in the dark, have more opportunities to meet pirates. It's really a promising industry. Furofrafor. Dover, do you want to become a pirate too? Virgo looked at Doflamingo and asked. Doflamingo touched his chin, and then said, that's right. There is no doubt that the next big era must be the era of pirates. So Doflamingo also wants to catch up with this wave of clippers. Among other things, he is really planning to be a 7 warlords of the sea. And this is one of the main reasons why he wants to join the pirate industry. Join the pirate industry, build your own reputation and aura, and then become 7 warlords of the sea. With the convenience of 7 warlords of the sea, you can walk between black and white, grow and expand your power rapidly. When the time is right, fight for supremacy. This is Doflamingo's rough vision of the road ahead. The defeat of Golden Lion Shiki in the Edd War Sea shocked the whole world. Although the impact of this naval battle will inevitably radiate the entire world, at least for now, this wind has not yet blown to West Blue. In the restaurant, Doflamingo was elegantly dividing the steak with a knife and fork, while listening to the report from his younger brother. Master Toropol has left Frevens, and all the platinum lead business in Frevens has been planned, and nothing superfluous has happened. A younger brother of the Donquixote family held holding a document to read to Doflamingo. After the news passed, he turned over a page of the file, and then continued, Master Pika. Huh? Doflamingo asked softly after hearing the brief bewilderment, what happened? Master Pika snatched a devil fruit from the pirates in North Blue. It seems to be Paramecia shishi fruit, the little brother said quickly. Pika was also one of the 4 cadres who initially followed him in Doflamingo. Donquixote family currently has 4 top cadres, namely diamonds, hearts, spades, and clubs, which are marked by the card series of playing cards. And the 4 top cadres are the 4 guys who first worshipped him as king back then. They are Diamante, Virgo, Pika, and Toropol. It can be said that the 4 of them are currently the strongest 4 in the Donquixote family except for Doflamingo. Among them, Diamante is currently ranked first among the cadres, followed by Virgo, then Pika, and finally Toropol, the snotty man. In terms of talent, Doflamingo feels that among the 4 major cadres under him, only Virgo and Diamante have strengths, and they are worthy of their own efforts to cultivate. As for Pika and Toropol, there is really no value in cultivating strength. Pika is okay, at least he looks tall and big, and he pretends to be good. Toropol is simply weak and sick, thin and like a firewood stick. If it wasn't for the ability to stick to fruit to disguise its size, it would really have no deterrent force for a cadre at all. Although my family members are extremely loyal, they are too good at it. Stone fruit. Doflamingo took a bite of the beef, thought for a while, and then said, tell Pika, he can distribute it himself, whether he eats it himself or gives it to someone else, it doesn't matter. The stone fruit is the same thing. The expressive power looks like Logia, but it is actually a Paramecia fruit. The main direction of the ability is also reflected in the assimilation of rocks. To be honest, he may be a good hand in civil engineering, but in terms of combat effectiveness, Doflamingo feels that it is not as good as Paramecia's steel fruit. In my impression, in the original story, Pika should have eaten the fruit directly, and has since become a stone man. Doflamingo has no opinion on this, as long as he likes it. Anyway, Doflamingo himself does not have too high expectations for Pika, so he can do whatever he likes. Last year, the Donquixote family bought a paramecia flying fruit from the dark world, and Diamante almost ate it. Luckily Doflamingo stopped him. As one of the few cadres with outstanding talents, Doflamingo hopes to make Diamante grow taller in the future, so don't just eat any weird devil fruit. Speaking of these, Doflamingo thought of the future cadre reserve and development of the Donquixote family. If you want to become bigger and stronger, you must have a professional and reliable team, which is the same in all walks of life. Doflamingo plans to wait for the right time to become a pirate. Then forming a pirate group will not be as leisurely as it is now. Pirates are indeed the industry outlet of the next era, but this industry has always been very dangerous. It is far more dangerous than his Doflamingo smuggling now. It is the day of knife-edge blood. Then I have to find a group of powerful companions, otherwise, how can they, Donquixote family, these rotten sweet potatoes and smoked bird eggs, make Don Quixote great again? Loyalty alone cannot accomplish anything. Thinking of this, Doflamingo still feels a little pity. If he was born decades earlier, he might have fooled the two monsters Sakazuki and Pelusalino out of North Blue, and started a business together? Looking at it now, although North Blue still has great potential, it will take too much time. Almost the next generation of powerhouses in North Blue are heading towards that generation of evil. Like Trafalgar Law, Basil Hawkins, Drake, whatever. The one who was barely able to catch up, and was not particularly outstanding, was this guy Bellamy. Therefore, it is unrealistic to gather a group of powerful partners from North Blue in a short period of time. In the end, we have to plan carefully after flying the pirate flag to go to sea. Now, it is better to do what you can do first, and that is to train Virgo and Diamante. Needless to say, Virgo is very talented in hockey and taishu. As for Diamante, although he has a weird personality, he is actually a very powerful swordsman. Also Doflamingo's fencing teacher, when he was young. Speaking of swordsmanship, Doflamingo seems to be somewhat talented in this area, but he is not energetic enough. In the end, he still gave priority to hockey when it comes to hockey and kendo. Thinking about it now, when the time is right, might it be a reasonable choice to pick up the way of the sword again? Just when Doflamingo was listening to the summary of the family's trivial matters and thinking about these messy things, a small fleet of 6 ships rushed back near the Ohara sea area. On the leading flagship, Albia was standing on the deck, holding a devil fruit with a very strange pattern in his hand. After more than half a year, Albia led a fleet of 8 ships to set off, and finally succeeded in bringing back the devil fruit that Doflamingo wanted. The only pity is that they only returned 6 ships. But in fact, this is a very lucky situation. After all, sleeping ancient town is buried in New World. Sometimes if the luck is not good, the entire fleet will disappear. You see, isn't that what Shiki is? The Donquixote family naturally arranged some eyeliners at the port, so when Albia's fleet just approached, someone quickly passed the news up. And when Albia got off the boat, Doflamingo was already waiting for her on the pier. The sea breeze blows over the pink flamingo feather coat on Doflamingo's shoulders, making the feathers move with the wind. He is wearing a wine-red shirt inside, and the lower body is decent black suit pants and crocodile leather shoes. Coupled with Doflamingo's already tall figure, excellent appearance and short light blonde hair, not to mention, aside from redundant factors, just standing there is very handsome. Especially Doflamingo's natural temperament. The corners of his mouth are only slightly raised, with a very ordinary smile, but this smile looks evil and awe-inspiring when placed on him. Even though he hated such a despicable person like Doflamingo in his heart, Albia had to admit that this guy was indeed handsome. She took a deep breath, praying in her heart that the bastard Doflamingo would have some credibility, took the devil fruit and quickly got out of Ohara, and then walked forward. Doflamingo seemed to be calm at this time, but in fact, he was also a little excited. The Donquixote family has been ordering devil fruit in North Blue all these years, but the devil fruit in Albia's hand is probably the only one that Doflamingo has seen in the 7 years since he came to this world. The top devil fruit. Zone Bat Fruit Phantom Beast Vampire Form.